The two girls watch as the twins are up to their old tricks again, mocking the governess again. It's better to stop it quickly before it gets worse. The woman comes out to them and orders them not to do this. It was not easy for His Majesty to find a teacher once again. Until the lady herself asks for help, nothing can be done. The brunette, whose name seems to be Sarara Popo, is playing with the children, suggesting that they take another lap on the cart. It will not be possible to study at this pace unless you reduce the time. Turning around a little girl with white hair whines she doesn't want to study because at her age, it doesn't seem like the best idea. Her name is Rosalind Adelio, the first of the twins. After her words, the beauty turns to her brother asking what he wants. As it turns out, the boy also wants to continue playing. His name is Ferritan Adelio, the second of the twins. The woman sighed. It didn't suit her for things to be this way. They would have one last circle, and after that they would go back to the castle. In return, if the kids try hard enough in the lesson they have, the games will be much more interesting next time. At first, the children didn't like what was expected of them either, but literally after the words about games, smiles immediately appeared on their faces. It was time to go. From the side, two men watch what is happening. It is impossible to believe their eyes that the twins are behaving so obediently. The new governess has exceeded all expectations. The brunette turns to His Majesty, asking if this is the result he has long desired. Helios lowers his head and looks away. The guy admits that at first he was a little worried that she would soon drop everything and run away, but apparently it was in vain. Popo is coping perfectly. Rosalind jumps out of the carriage and squeals with joy. Fur, who needed help, asks to do this again sometime. Due to the heavy load, beads of sweat appeared on her forehead, which Sarara wipes away. She is glad that she liked everything, but it was time to go back. The girl could not even think that in her new life she would do the same job. The heroine's past was truly remarkable. First, she successfully graduated from school and university, realizing that the best was ahead. After this, the girl managed to find a job in her profession, and she began teaching at school. Even in her free time, she did not sit, but consulted with parents. Over time, the lady's efforts paid off. She did not know how one could deserve such a thing at such an early age, but she became a well-deserved and recognized teacher of her country. There was nothing to complain about, but one day, Sarara suddenly died right at work, not having lived to see her 27th birthday. On that fateful day, she stayed late at school and complained that due to the epidemic, all important events were postponed to the second semester. While she was thinking about how she would have to manage her time, an embarrassing situation occurred. The computer turned off right in the middle of work, leaving no chance. It sounds silly, but Popo died when, out of anger that her report had not been saved, she took a sip of coffee and choked on it. After this, the girl was reborn, miraculously retaining the memory of her past life. At first, she was happy because she was the only child of aristocrats. It all ended after some time. The parents were seriously deceived, having lost all their property and land. The family was mired in debt. The event came as a serious shock, and the couple's health was shaken when they passed away, Popo having just turned 15 years old. After being left alone, she began looking for a job in order to survive. What a disappointment it was to find out that she did not meet one criterion. Every employer required a person to be able to use magic. Even street vagabonds had such abilities, but not Sarara. Debts won't pay themselves off. The girl had to find a way to distinguish herself from others, a task that seemed impossible for now. Only after some time did a good idea come to mind. Popo is a recognized expert in teaching children in the Adelio Empire. The education system is not developed, and the aristocrats teach children at home. The current situation was only to her advantage. In the past, when working in an elementary school, the girl did not even think about private lessons, but in this world you can make a fortune from it. The lady's wit made her want to smile. At least she understood that there was something real for her. Before you start teaching children, it would be worth understanding what you can teach them. Everyone has their own needs. You need to be ready for everything. Of course, the first thing that showed up was disappointment. The lady could not teach magic or fencing. There were few ideas, but after 3 years, we managed to achieve amazing results. Wherever the heroine went, she heard how they did not praise her, noticing that even the most restless were silent when they saw her in front of them. She wrote the training courses herself and adapted to each child. If we speak briefly, she was ideal. It wasn't easy, but in 3 years the girl had paid off all of her family's debts, so now she could definitely live her life to her heart's content. The downside was that sometimes she came across such terrible people as the Duke. The brunette often regretted that she had died in her past life, and especially at such moments. Smiling and containing his inner dislike, Sarara offers to tell him about his daughter Eliza's further education. The man receives books that were personally written by the beauty. Nodding, the young man promises that everything will be fine. If it is so, he agrees to such a learning strategy, but he puts his hand on her leg. The woman shouts, holding out another edition. She notes that this is what will help raise his daughter to be a worthy person. By handing over a piece of paper, the teacher is going to show the level of knowledge demonstrated during the test. In fact, the girl is doing very badly, but the man does not understand this. It was originally planned that after seeing this, the Duke would start to worry and the lady would show him an effective training plan. There was no reason to think that Basman was so stupid he would have to use his charm, so the beauty smiled. Eliza can do absolutely anything, but she looks like a duke, so it's hard for her to prove herself, in which case there is an option of what can be done. The young man came to the right place because the heroine always has her personal plan with her. Such an outstanding personality, as the girl has a very high level of thinking. Since the child is still a little difficult, the lady came up with a good option on how they can proceed. It seems that Basman agrees, but a decent price needs to be set. He has behaved badly before, so he won't get off so easily. A calculation is made which shows that the classes are very expensive, only 30 zlotys per month for 2 classes per week. It is not surprising that he is in shock, but the lady will not adjust to him. She calmly doubles the amount. Education for Miss Basman cannot be cheap because she is a child prodigy. It is worth remembering. The Duchess will spare no expense for her daughter's education, and the man shouldn't back down either. Virgo is a very busy person, so when she is about to leave, she is stopped at the very last moment and offered 120 zlotys. Such money seems unrealistic, but the duties are even worse. For a fee, the girl will have to entertain Basman. A hand fell on the shoulder, which made the lady feel terribly uncomfortable. She threw her palm away, and shaking her head, repeated that she would pretend as if she had not heard all this. Already heading for the exit, the heroine is stopped. The poor aristocrat never dreamed of such money. She is forced to think the Duke is pressing on the most painful part. The door was already open when the man put his hand behind him, closing it back. His voice lowered. It was hard to believe that the lady had actually decided to refuse. She had to run, but she definitely wouldn't be able to compete with the guy in strength. The necessary strategy came into his hands on its own. The lady will use cunning smiling. She notes that he should have thought about the offer and not refused. Sarara sees a smile as she is praised for her choice, and at the perfect moment, she slashes at her opponent, causing him to fall to the floor and scream. The lady once again recommends that the young man read the book together with his daughter. He can discover quite a lot of new things there. Getting into the carriage, the heroine is about to head home. She thinks that maybe she shouldn't have been so abrupt, but the man asked for it himself. The meeting with Basman was very exhausting. In her heart, the brunette only dreams of earning money as quickly as possible, buying land, building a house there, and living happily ever after. Before heading to the estate, Sarara remembers that she needs to see the marquise, who has an unruly child. Edward shouts that he does not want to study, but that is not how things are done. He will have to inherit the title in the future, and therefore it will be more difficult for him. The boy understands that he will be the next marquis, but this does not mean that his desires change in any way. Letitia, the boy's mother, stands with her head down, asking for forgiveness for the way things are with him. In fact, sometimes he is uncontrollable. When another attempt is made to ask for something to be done, but the baby starts to get even more hysterical, Popo calmly drinks tea. She feared the worst when she was told about the student's character. Everything is not so bad. In just a year, the hero will sing differently. Smiling at the marquise, the girl asks to leave them alone. Letitia is a little worried because she doesn't know what to expect from such an unruly son, but she is assured that everything will be fine. Blue-eyed listens to the same screams, only now alone with the guy. She leans back, compared to Gavalt from elementary school. What is happening is similar to the singing of birds. As soon as the brunette has shouted himself sick and is exhausted, it is the governess's turn to make her move. 5 minutes later, he approaches the girl. If this stranger really intends to teach she should start, that's exactly why she was brought here. The brunette doesn't know how to get along with a man who doesn't want to do anything. Sarah doesn't agree to this. Edward has the right to continue doing what he's already doing. After what was said, the blue-eyed girl demonstratively turns away. Bennett is probably surprised. He expected that they would fuss around him in the same way as all the people did before. Now it remains to see how the boy will act when he understands that the teacher has no choice. She will not teach him. 5 minutes have passed. The room is quiet, so it is time to get ready. The girl threw her bag over herself and turning around was faced with a sad face. Edward's face clearly showed that he wanted to be taught. Sitting down, the heroine decided that she needed to do something else. Taking out a caramel, she first holds it out and then throws it into her mouth. The taste is amazing. The heroine will eat another one because she can't refuse so easily. She pours 5 pieces on the table and turns away. A second later, something changed. The young gentleman seemed to have stolen one of the treats, and that was the end of it. Only shameless thieves do that, not ordinary people. The boy makes excuses. The heroine seems to smile, but then squints. If it wasn't him, then there should be 5 pieces on the table, not 4. Looking down to the side, Bennett tries to justify himself. It just so happened that one fell, and he simply picked it up. Smiling, the lady offers to try another candy with her. Perhaps the boy will even tell you why he so desperately does not want to study. He definitely has some reason for this which not everyone can understand. His father and mother grumble every day about how Edward needs to become a better man just because their title of Marquis will pass to him in the future. Bennett repeats the same thing over and over again, not even giving him a chance to breathe. He does this both while reading and while eating. The previous governesses taught him to write and read, and the girls even praised them, not understanding that their son didn't need it. Unfortunately, Sarara's lesson was just as boring, although you can eat lots and lots of caramels during it, which lifts your mood. Getting up, the lady went to the door. The young man himself said that there was no point in him studying, and in that case, she could not stay where she was. She really did not plan to teach the gentleman. The lady does not forget to mention that she treats well and stays close only to those who really want it, otherwise nothing works. The brunette almost opened the door when she was stopped, blushing a little. The kid once again clarified, however, it will be possible to eat candy during lessons. All this time, the Marquise stood behind the door and tried to listen for some reason. It suddenly became quiet. It is not clear how Edward decided to sit still. As the woman thought, the governess failed, but there is nothing surprising about that. She is only 23 years old, and considering that the baby is very difficult, it becomes understandable. At the most opportune moment, the door opens. A girl with a child appears there. It seems the young gentleman wants to say something. Smiling, the baby expresses his desire to learn from Sarah. The woman could not contain her joyful emotions and began to cry. This happens for the first time. Time passed, classes continued, another lesson ended. Bowing his head, the young man thanks and promises that he will look forward to the next meeting. Mother can't stop crying again thanks to Popo. The boy is getting better every day. It's amazing how polite he has become. The young gentleman has great potential. He will surprise more than once. The best is yet to come because the Marquise cries every time the consultations are very long. Wiping away her tears, the lady thanks for listening to her. For the time she took there will definitely be money, and in that case, Sarara will listen. The other teachers couldn't do anything about Edward, but something changed. Madam asks about the question she wants to ask. Smiling, the heroine again wonders how the teacher managed to make the boy study. She must have some secret methods. The brunette assures that nothing like that happened here. She won't tell that the whole secret is in the caramels, so as not to seem strange. The lady also took care of the condition of her ward's teeth, so over time she began to give a little less candy, just 1 for each lesson. Just recently, the Marquise went to an audience with His Majesty. Helios is the youngest emperor in the entire history of the Adelio Empire. The young man has a noble pedigree, a pleasant appearance, and a wonderful character. All young and not so young ladies dream of marrying him. You can see photo portraits everywhere. It all started when the woman's husband began to praise Edward and his successes. The brunette casually recalls that the king has a twin brother and sister. He looks after them. Of course, everyone knows about the princess and prince. Since they were 7 years old, just like the girl's son, the emperor was very interested and actively asked how they managed to calm Edward down. The whole empire has already heard about the boy's whims. His Majesty's brother and sister are equally restless children. They are somewhat similar. The girl would like to know if the upbringing of twins is really so neglected. Something must have gone wrong. The only good thing was the imperial carriage which I was able to ride in. The king sent it especially for me. This can be considered a tribute to the times when the new ruler was a prince, and the woman's husband taught him some lessons. Now it is clear why there were gaps in Edward's upbringing. Popo seems to have no idea yet what they were talking about with the emperor. The man called to ask what had happened and what had changed the boy, and asked about the new governess. In order not to hide anything, the Marquise immediately told about Sarara. She really is a talented teacher, deserving recognition from other people. In the royal palace, the advisor stands in His Majesty's office. One cannot help but say that the young man looks quite tired. The younger ones again did not allow him to sleep well. They tormented the man, making him want to run away. Even though he hadn't had enough sleep, the young man couldn't refuse to play. The brunette was skeptical. It was worth spoiling the family, but one should never forget about oneself. Helios sighs. He can't do anything about it. Children need to be pampered too. They have it hard enough after the death of their parents, so they need even more attention. To the question, which is already stupid enough, the blonde answers yes. He admits that there was not a day when sadness did not fill his heart with dark colors. His father and mother were everything to him. The parents, despite their venerable age, were lucky enough to have twins. Their happiness knew no bounds. Just 3 months later, they died in a catastrophe under strange circumstances. Even for His Majesty, it was a trauma. For Rose and Fur, it was even more difficult. They don't knock on the door, but immediately burst in. The man falls to the floor but wants to say something, so he doesn't shut up right away. Raphael was enraged by this behavior. He asked to behave more respectfully. Turning around, Jean Bronte is surprised that the assistant is also in the office. The only thing that matters now is that the twins will soon turn the entire palace upside down. They have done something again, and those gathered don't understand everything. This time, the prince and princess covered everything with mud, first using magic to dig up all the lawns near the castle, saying that they would build a new house out of it, and then they started throwing mud at each other. The kids are using mana for other purposes again, and apparently there's no explanation for them since it doesn't work on them at all. The three go into the garden where they find the two sitting in the ground and continuing to laugh. The maids are horrified. The blonde doesn't remember them acting like this at that age, but in reality, it's because they were all much calmer. To begin with, His Majesty orders that all the dirt be removed, returned to its place, and the children washed. There must be a governess somewhere. The woman who had recently been invited ran away immediately after everything she had seen. Her complexion was also not very good. It seemed that she was in real horror. All the appointed maids were also forced to run away in all directions just to save themselves. Jean understands because the gardeners also went on strike after what they saw. The blonde no longer understands what to do. Sarara will be the last hope. It is she who must save the castle from the invasion of Rose and Fair. Countess Adiel does not believe what was said. The girl will really work as the new governess for the twins in the castle of His Majesty the Emperor. Brushing it off, the brunette assures that this is the first time she has heard such a thing. Popo couldn't help but notice that she is asked a similar question in almost every estate where she comes to work. Bennett presented it all in such a way that it seemed as if the situation had changed slightly. She had told the news at the last tea party. If the Marchioness went to the palace and the lady was praised a little there, it doesn't mean anything. Popo herself never received an offer from the castle. Adiel thought she had received reliable information. However, if Sarara denied it, there was no other option but to agree with her and nod. The rumors started with that ad recently. The man said that he was looking for a new governess and even added that her background was of no importance to him at all. For the girl, it is strange that the young man does not care about anything, but for the Countess, it seems real. The Emperor first tries to determine what kind of person he is by nature and what is hidden inside him. At first, Everyone doubted the man because he was too young to sit on the throne, but he soon proved that he was more than worthy of his place. According to the majority, it was clear from the first glance at His Majesty that he would be excellent. He has a very beautiful face. Apparently, the Countess knows about everyone and everything, so Popo asks about Rosa and Farah. Rumors about them couldn't just come out of thin air. There's something there. The beauty looks away, realizing that she has information. Sarara smiles, asking a direct question. Their highnesses are probably very active children. The kids are both completely different in character from Helios. Being younger, their older brother was much calmer, not such a tomboy at all. All the newspapers are full of the antics of the young prince and princess. They harass the servants all day long, and at night they don't let anyone sleep crying because of longing for their parents. It must be very hard for the king. The maiden suddenly falls silent. She has been chatting for too long. This whole discussion only concerns the king's family. But if Sarara wants to know more, it is easier to look for some articles. People seem to be reluctant to talk about the Adelio family, and by evening, the girl had collected some boring material to understand that they really do write a lot about them, because it's much easier that way. After a while, the lady could not utter a word. She understood why His Majesty was interested in the words of the Marquis Bennett. The kids had a whole extensive list of things they had already managed to do. These two were more mischievous than all the other fidgets put together. The lady was reading the news until she came across some love story that looked more like a lie. She immediately threw the newspaper aside. She didn't need to see that. Even if that person interrupted, there is no smoke without fire. There is some truth there. If the heroine is offered to take up training, she will immediately refuse for her own sake. The girl was thinking about the future when someone rang the doorbell. It was already quite late, but as it turned out, there was a messenger with a letter behind the door. Since Lady Popo lives in this house, an important letter is handed to her, which she cannot miss. The seal of the Adelio family is visible on the outside. The emperor was the one who sent the message. It seems he really plans to ask a woman to become a governess in his palace somehow. In that case, it is real. The pages contain a greeting. The man was told that Sarara is good at raising children and knows how to find a common language. His Majesty was interested in the recommendation. Her hands are shaking, but there is nothing to be done. She needs to refuse immediately. The lady certainly does not plan to get involved with the imperial family in order to tarnish her honest name. Not only will it be dangerous there, but the children are also difficult, which adds to the problems. The girl's affairs are going well even without any risks. Having sent the refusal, the woman hoped that this would be the end of it. But already in the morning, 3 people dressed in dark robes stood in front of her door. They had arrived from the palace. Sarara had no choice but to let the envoys in, no matter how much she wanted things to be different. Attention was accidentally drawn to one of the arrivals. He had a sword hanging at his side. The first thought was that they decided to finish off the girl. It was necessary to answer the letter differently. Popo feels that she is in trouble, but holding back tears offers to sit down. Imagine her surprise when the handsome man took off his cape. It turned out to be Helios. I wanted to ask something, but His Majesty started speaking first. The blonde had to come himself since a personal request could not be postponed. Only halfway there did the hero realize that he had completely forgotten about manners. He introduced himself. The letter was the same, but repeating the procedure would change little. The girl did not expect that the young man would be even more handsome up close. Many people start to get nervous because of his presence. Helios never wanted this. He asks to raise his head higher. The young man came to ask her to think again about the position of governess, which he proposed in the letter. It would be wonderful if the lady became a tutor to his younger brother and sister. The brunette doesn't know how to react to this. She already understood what the hero wants, but after the refusal in the letter, she wouldn't want to return to the same thing. Popo was sorry that she had forced the king to come to her estate, but as has already been said, she was unworthy of entering the castle. If an impoverished noblewoman became a teacher to the royals, not everyone would like it. Even if you ignore other people's opinions, the beauty is seriously afraid that she will not be able to provide the necessary knowledge. The blonde understands that this is because Rose and Fair are disobedient. The beauty understands that she had to hide the magazine. She apologizes. She was just curious. The king himself noted this. Not to make accusations, he has completely different motives. After losing their parents, Rose and Fur refuse to listen to anyone. During the day they torment everyone with their games. Sometimes they behave simply disgustingly, and at night they do not want to sleep. This can be attributed to age for 7-year-old children. This is normal. The woman automatically reacted as if she was consulting another parent. Popo is asked again if she would be willing to become a governess for the king's brother and sister. He is prepared to pay 500 zlotys for both. Sarara involuntarily remembers her real life. She manages to get only 250 coins, and that is if she works without days off all week looking after children. The impoverished orphan could never even dream of such money for working with two rascals. She is not ready to refuse in this way. It means too much to her. Her face turned a little red as the woman asked again, as if trying to understand if it was perhaps too little. The young man wanted to know more and smiled in response. The blonde offers 600 zlotys, freezing almost in real horror. The brunette asks if Adelio knows how much she earns for a whole month. As it turned out, Helios was still aware of the governess's income, but since there were 2 children, he decided that the amount should be doubled. Perhaps it was worth thinking about something additional. If 500 is suitable, His Majesty hopes that in the future the beauty will be able to pacify his twins. She herself does not understand when she managed to give consent. Lowering his head in sadness, the blonde turns away. He doesn't like it when something goes completely wrong. She hasn't said anything yet, so there's no need to get upset ahead of time. Smiling, the hero nods. It seems that His Majesty had planned from the very beginning to corner the lady in this way and force her to give consent. Getting up from her seat, the brunette asks to wait. She needs to prepare some papers and a contract. They hand her a folder. Everything is already there. Popo often adds other points to the template. This time, there will be something new. Usually these are the wishes of the employers. If Helios has any wishes, he can tell her so that the girl has time to make adjustments to the curriculum. The books also belong to the same list. In such a case, the young man asks that at the end of the lesson, or at the end of the day, he be given a report on everything so that the man is aware of what is happening with the younger ones. There is no desire to change teachers. Often, you need to work for at least 6 months. In addition to teaching, your responsibilities will also include feeding lunch and dinner, and you also need to put the children to bed on time. If the beauty understood correctly, she is asked to perform the duties of not only a governess, but also a nanny. In her past life, she also had to take care of children. It is not so difficult. Adelio has no other requests. He doesn't want to cause unnecessary inconvenience. Popo is free to act at her own discretion for a complete understanding. It is necessary to conduct the first lesson. Since the payment is more than worthy, her conscience does not allow her to ask for more. The lady holds out the contract and asks him to sign it. After the meeting ended, the 3 of them headed back to the carriage. Raphael can't stop thinking that the governess might run away just like everyone else before her. If you think about it, she most likely won't be able to cope. The brunette admits that he doesn't have great hopes because compared to the others, she also doesn't have enough experience. The emperor disagrees. The marquis and his wife highly praised Popo. Their words can be safely trusted because their family is not one of those who give flattering reviews just like that. The advisor still doubts the lady probably has talent, but even that might not be enough for twins. There is no choice in any case. Lack of sleep will soon become fatal. The hero is ultimately happy he has completed a worthwhile deal, and 500 zlotys for pacifying the little ones is nothing. Usually much more is spent on repairing the palace after their pranks. The moment that comes to mind is when they were discussing the price. The girl looked like a rabbit who was a little scared. There is chaos in the dining room. Rosalina screams that she will not eat until her brother Heli comes. She wants him to feed her and so throws her plate aside. The soup accidentally fell and spilled right on the dress of one of the maids. She exhaled angrily. She heard that His Majesty would be late and most likely would not be back for a long time. The cooks will ask for another portion, but they will still have to eat without the young man. The blonde still does not agree to this and continues to rage. Turning around, Adelio realized that Fair had been eating calmly all this time. The princess took his plate away, shouting, asking why he was acting as if nothing had happened. Only then does the boy realize that he made a mistake. They agreed on something. But alas, the young man is hungry. This is more important to him than revival. Fair has already promised he can't change his mind so quickly. If there is no Helio, he will decide that the kids are able to be alone. This will not go unpunished for them either. Jumping up from his seat, the young man shouts that he will not eat either. He will wait for his brother, who should return soon, so that the children do not remain hungry. The maids had better hurry His Majesty. The door opened right in front of the guys, which made them jump back. A blonde guy was standing on the threshold, smiling, asking where they were going in the middle of dinner. Fur boasts about Rose's achievements, for which he gets a kick in the leg. He himself sat and ate calmly, while the girl had to behave inappropriately towards the staff. Trying to calm down, the king asks to serve him dinner. Doing everything himself is the key to success. The soup was on the table in just a few minutes. Trying to chew, Fur asks a question. It is not clear why the young man came so early today, but it would be good if it was the same every time. His Majesty went to an important meeting today. A new governess will arrive to them. Frightened Rose immediately rushed to her brother. They do not need anyone. If everything is like this, a man will never come to them. They assure Rose that this will not happen, but she continues to cry. They want the guy to always be with them. It all ended with the twins starting to cry eventually. Helio sent them to bed after the story. He kisses them on the forehead, promising that the teacher will come tomorrow. Of course, they will like the girl. Almost falling asleep, Fur tells his sister that he doesn't want her to be with them for long. Even this person can be harmed. Last time, after the bees, the governess ran away. His Majesty felt ashamed. It became clear why the girl quickly quit, but did not answer any questions. Rosalind understands that they do not need anyone except her brother, and she is sorry that she has to cause inconvenience. They still have a lot to learn, and for this they need a teacher, alas, but nothing works. The twins call for Mom and Dad in their sleep, and it is clear that they miss them. Last night, after the Emperor's visit, the girl decided to finish reading what she found in the magazine. That story turned out to be much more fascinating. The woman is trying to distract herself from unnecessary thoughts. It is not the time to think about something unnecessary when she has come to the bakery to buy herself some sweets. In that edition, the lady also read that Her Majesty the Princess loves strawberries and Fur loves melon, and the saleswoman orders 3 boxes of chocolate with exactly these flavors. Sarara was distracted from her shopping when 2 girls appeared behind her. One of them was the already familiar Marquise, who decided to introduce Popo to her friends. It was this lady who had a hand in Edward's re-education. Everyone has already heard about the teacher's exploits. She did good and what seemed impossible. One of the aristocrats does not believe her eyes. She knew that the lady was young, but not that young. Smiling and waving the heroine, thanks for the sweet greeting. From now on, the woman will teach the twins the Emperor invited her to the castle to become the new governess. It was impossible to refuse because this was a personal request. The girl asks for forgiveness for not saying goodbye to their family last time. It's okay. It's good that everything ended well. With his face, the brunette had no doubt that the man was very popular with the ladies. In the magazine, he was not described as well as in life. The girls were distracted and began discussing the antics of the twins. Their highnesses almost every time tormented the governesses, forcing them to quit their jobs. The Marquise notices the strange expression of her friend and assures her that Sarara will cope. She even got along with Bennett, and he is worse than Rose and Fairy. The brunette is capable of winning hearts. She understands a lot about this, which means that everything will end more than well. The girl tries so hard to support that it becomes even scarier. The next morning, the lady went to the castle. She prepared chocolate and a game to loosen up, and even took books specially selected for their highnesses. Looking around, the heroine hopes that she hasn't forgotten anything. The footman helps her into the carriage and then says that he will take her to the castle. At the gate, the lady was met by one of the knights who, smiling, asked if the ladies had arrived all right. This man had accompanied His Majesty when they were at the estate. Thanks to the fact that Helios sent a carriage, Popo arrived in comfort. She has nothing to complain about. Everything is considered to be in perfect order, and that is how everything will continue to be. The young man nods. He didn't get a chance to introduce himself last time they met, so now he gives his name, Jean Bronte, His Majesty's personal knight. The Emperor had instructed the assistant to greet the new governess, and Sarara bowed her head, smiling in return. If the young man wishes, he can simply address them by name, but first they should go inside. Their highnesses are already waiting. A decorated room has been allocated for lessons. Helios ordered to equip a room for classes. It seems that the emperor is very sensitive to the issue of education. A woman enters the garden. She doesn't know how to react because everything around is too dirty. The terrible mess is paralyzing. She shouldn't have put on white shoes. They are almost black already. It seems that the servants were forgotten to be ordered to clean up. Jean explains that just recently the twins wanted to build a mud house. The gardeners, seeing the consequences, went on strike. If such an environment makes the guest nervous, she can move away. The lady waves it off. She is more attracted to the palace itself, which is quite luxurious in itself, which is not surprising. There was not a soul around. It was completely empty inside. Bronte pointed ahead. They were already there and they were expected there. The door was closed, although the brunette even pulled the handle twice. Finally, he managed to get into the room, but there was neither the princess nor the Prince. Jean does not understand why the lady does not enter, but as it turns out, there is simply no one there. Heli warned the knight to keep an eye on his brother and sister if anyone was moved to them before heading off to meet the new teacher. Smiling, the lady assures that nothing terrible has happened. She will simply go looking for them. Probably the servants are also looking for them now. Running away, the brunette asks if anything to ask the maids to help with the search this way. It will be easier for all of them. The lady is not going to hesitate. The first thing Sarara asks for is to take her luggage. The room has been furnished well for her. She looks out of the window. It is too high for children to jump out. Previously, Popo always found those who hid from her not wanting to come to class. This time will be no different. She needs to try. The maids said that they were running around looking for them. They were in different places, but all the rooms nearby had already been checked. There were no ideas left at all. The lady can do whatever she wants. His Majesty gave her consent to this. The heroine went to the garden because in this part of the palace there was only the kitchen left. The woman first looked into the dining room where there was no one. It didn't look like the children spent time there. Fur's room was also empty. The last option is left here. Everything needs to be double-checked. Naughty children often hide behind the door to jump out and scare the adults who come looking for them. Since Popo is the best governess in the empire, she can't be fooled by random tricks. She looks inside, but again sees only emptiness. This is disappointing. His Majesty appeared behind her, rushing to attack. He turned the tap from which a huge amount of water immediately poured out, causing the lady to get soaked through. Drying her hair, the heroine sighs. If she had mana, such a trick would not have worked so easily. Obviously, Ferritan was having fun since he stands there and smiles. In fact, the baby is confused because for some reason the girl is not angry. The governess takes him out of the bath. It is dangerous to do any tricks that can cause him to fall. The brother had already talked about the new teacher, but now they finally managed to meet the boy, asked about her age, and received a simple answer. The woman is only 4,532 years old. The blonde doesn't believe it. People can't live that long. The girl decides to joke a little, so she continues to put on a comedy act, assuring that in fact it's all real. Heli never talked about anything like that before going to bed. When the boy saw his brother, he could ask if the new governess was really that age. The young man was immediately distracted. When he heard about the age, the maids froze in horror. His Highness obediently walked, holding the girl's hand. The brunette is thinking about how she can win Ferritan's heart and go in search of Rose. If she leaves the blonde alone, he will immediately run away. A good idea comes to mind. If you can suddenly cheer up the kid, maybe he will help by telling you where his sister is hiding. Blue-Eyed suggests playing carriage. They will ride as if on a real carriage. Her eyes immediately light up. In anticipation, the young man asks where to go. Just as first graders are delighted with different cars, children in the Empire of Adelio want to drive fast. The prince is no exception. In his room, there was something like a miniature carriage. Turning to the maids, Popo asks them to find something like a small cart in the palace. Of course they can do it, but it is unclear why Sarara would need something like that. The girl wants to amuse His Highness, so she asks not to stay too long if possible. It is better to make something stronger. The wheels should not fall off. Half an hour later, the cart was delivered, but the hero again didn't like something. It seemed to him that it would be much bigger. There's no point in getting disappointed ahead of time, says Popo. If all else fails, the hero is not obliged to say where the princess is climbing inside. He smiles, deciding that it is time to go. About half an hour passed, during which time the two managed to ride around half of the castle and the palace garden. Obviously, the baby liked it, but Sarara was quite tired. Falling to the ground, the girl asks to give her a little time to rest. The brother said that the governess is cheerful. It turned out that this is indeed true. His Majesty never lies. Even this time he was right, raising herself a little. The lady smiles. She will not leave the guy alone. If Rose also likes the new teacher, Ferriton finds himself thinking that he wouldn't mind her staying with them. Only time will tell. It was time for the prince to fulfill part of their deal. Helios always kept his promises. A brother should look up to him and keep his word. The young man doesn't know what to do. He did promise Sarah, but Rose had suggested hiding from the governess much earlier and ordered him not to reveal where she was under any circumstances. Lowering his head, the baby repeats that he wants to be like Helios, realizing that the time has come to act. The brunette reminds that she always rewards those who keep their word. If Ferriton tells where the princess is hiding, everything will be better next time. Madame will take her on a ride in the carriage again, or arrange something more interesting. Immediately changing his thoughts, the blonde points forward. There is a large closet. She said that if she climbs into it, no one will be able to find her. The blue-eyed girl nods. It never occurred to her that the girl could hide there without his help. It would never have been possible to find Her Highness. The young man feels right. He likes that he was praised. The beauty slowly approaches the door, and then does not open it. For some reason there is silence inside. The room is also empty. There is some white spot on the floor squatting down. The heroine realizes that it seems to look like flour. The boy shouts, giving the command. The woman has a whole heap of flour on her, which was thrown down from above, giggling. The heroine, sitting on the cupboard, notices that the governess is now too dirty. The princess got there with the help of Mana. The beauty understands that everything is again connected with the fact that those who wield magic differ in their abilities. Stretching out her hands, the woman asks to come down. It is dangerous to sit so high. The girl refused to come down with the help of her strength, so she jumped into his hands. Almost immediately, the heroine runs to her brother and immediately hits him on the head. The brunette managed to react and separated the two, standing in the middle. Rose was angry, as she believes for good reason. She has a good reason, because the young man was playing with the very person they originally planned to kick out. What is happening is completely different from what Her Majesty said. The maids cleaning the castle said that it turns out the boy was playing with the carriage. The young man made a promise and kept it. There is no need to scold him for this. Later, the lady was ordered to report what happened to Helios, but she does not know whether it is worth revealing the secret of what just happened. The woman will only tell the truth, but if the girl does two things that are asked, the story will change a little. The choice is up to Rose. The little girl agreed to listen firstly. She had to apologize to her brother, who was almost crying from the insult and pain. The blow was strong. If the beauty does not do the first thing, she will not be allowed to get into the carriage that she sees in front of her. Such transport can take you anywhere. Surely the princess is interested to know how far she can go. The little girl is trying to restrain herself, but it is becoming more and more difficult for her. She really wants to go for a ride, but does not understand why she should apologize. It seems that there is no point in waiting for a child. With these words, the heroine is about to leave, but then someone grabs her by the elbow, lowering her head. The blonde sadly apologizes for the way she behaved. Putting her hand on the guy's shoulder, the beauty repeats the same thing twice. Of course, this time the governess counts it, but in the future she asks never to apologize in such a way again. Pulling fur out of the carriage, Popo asks the princess to hug His Highness, thus making amends for her guilt. At first, the beauty gets angry, her face distorted by a grimace. Still stretching out her arms, the girl wraps them around her brother, and he immediately begins to smile, so everything was resolved. It was definitely worth it. Her Highness Rose did the right thing. She understood that there was no need to try to behave in a way that was not necessary. She should have understood what this would lead to. After the conversation, all three went to have fun in the garden, and so the whole day passed unnoticed. The twins changed into their pajamas and said they were ready for bed. The woman prepared a fascinating fairy tale that would be suitable for children. The beauty just begins to read when snoring is heard. The two fell asleep quite quickly. Pointing with her hand, the lady notes that their highnesses can be carried into the room. One of the maids, with panic in her eyes, assures that this cannot be done. If they are touched, it will be bad. In the end, they stayed in that room, but with pillows and blankets, the maids were delighted in their memory. The prince and princess had never fallen asleep so early. It would be strange if every day was the same. Assuring that there was no merit in this, the girl suggests that they were simply tired after an active game, and so fell asleep almost immediately. Blue-Eyed wants to know something for the future. The children are only 7 years old, and it seems that going to bed at 9 in the evening is a bit late. We need to change this somehow. The maids understood, but two refused to sleep until Helios arrived. The man usually showed up after midnight. Until that moment, there was either restless sleep or nothing at all. Adelio stayed with the children so that they would not cry sometimes until dawn, which is why he himself was very sleep-deprived, feeling very tired throughout the day. The girls feel sorry that Sarara also had a hard time because she couldn't even take a bath. She was doused with water and then rolled in flour. The lady finished the conversation making one conclusion for herself. Next time she definitely needs to take a change of clothes with her on the way she met Jean, who was surprised. It looks like the heroine has had a hard time. The prince and princess have put their hands on her dirty clothes. Bronte gives her her jacket because it has become cold. If everything remains as it is, it will end worse. The king asked to treat the governess with all due care and respect, and smiling, the beauty promised that she would wash the item later and return it back. The brunette escorted Sarara to His Majesty's office. Knocking on the door, the blue-eyed one asks for forgiveness for such a late visit. She is only carrying out the instructions given to her. The girl wants to report on the past day. Noticing the state in which the lady arrived, the man cannot restrain himself and laughs but immediately apologizes. In order not to stand at the door, the young man suggests that the heroine quickly come closer to him and sit down. It seems that the situation in the twins' palace is even worse than it was before. Smiling nervously, the lady turns away. She accidentally dropped her jacket, which the young man picks up. He does not think there is anything strange about this despite his status. The face blushes imperceptibly, leaving some strange sensations that hang in the air. It is not clear whether the emperor has a mistress, but she would be jealous seeing a handsome man next to others. Of course, it wasn't easy for the girl to decide to come to the castle. It's strange that she didn't rush to run away like everyone else did. Her dirty dress was obviously the work of the twins. Perhaps we should thank her for not leaving. In a luxurious setting, a silver-haired man leans towards a young woman with long blue locks. Noticing her confusion and uncertainty, she, wide-eyed and confused, tries to understand his words. His Majesty, embarrassed, realizes that what was said was misunderstood. Helios quickly explains that the castle has many rooms and baths and offers to call a maid to accompany him. The maid, stunned and flushed with embarrassment, squeezes out words of gratitude with difficulty, fervently assuring that she urgently needs to wash. The hero smiles, pleased. The brunette, with anxiety on her face, confidently refuses the help of the maids, who remind her of the king's order. She feels awkward and begs to be left alone, later finally alone in the flower bath. She sighs in relaxation, plunging into the water, enjoying the long-awaited moment of peace. In despair, Sarara dives into the water, scolding herself for her inappropriate fantasies. How could she have misunderstood his words so much, her thoughts floating as she laughs at her imaginary love story in an attempt to come to her senses? She hides her face in her hands, reminding herself of her past experiences and her own maturity. She needs to come to her senses. She reflects on how she lived 50 years alone, carried away by empty illusions, remembers how abruptly she was offered to wash herself, and jokes about her imaginary smell later after bathing. The girl shines with freshness and thanks for the opportunity to tidy herself up, feeling renewed. The silver-haired man wonders at the beauty's youthful appearance when she is without makeup. Inviting her to sit down, stopping opposite the heroine, explains what happened. the prince poured water on her and the princess showered her with flour, Helios suggests that the brother and sister have done something wrong again, not hiding a slight grin. Sarara says with a smile that the team of twins acted amazingly well together, although she expected a prank. But not on such a large scale. The friend apologizes and promises to talk to the younger ones so that they do not allow such antics again. She laughs, trying to smooth over the awkwardness of the situation. The young man seems interested. He asks if the children continued to be naughty after their meeting. The lady explains that after a funny greeting, she made them learn the traditional children's dance of the empire under her supervision. They danced 20 times until they got tired and then fell asleep. This has never happened before. The blonde man is surprised to see that Rose and Fur have fallen asleep and thanks Lady Sarah for her efforts, who in turn, with a beaming smile, states that she tried her best and is ready to try even harder in the future, resolutely clenching her fist in a burst of enthusiasm full of confidence in her abilities. The man warmly notes that it is getting chilly as the night approaches, but the girl quickly denies it, sheepishly assuring that it is not cold at all. He, not paying attention to her words, offers to bring warm clothes. Popo, in a panic, refuses, reminding that she has already received a jacket from the knight. The silver-haired man, without looking up from his cup of tea, calmly asks how the lesson went. The girl, having collected her thoughts, answers that the dance they were learning is called the penguin dance from the northern provinces, hinting at a fun and slightly unusual training session with children. The brunette animatedly explains that several dancers hold hands and spin around in a dance without letting go. She notes that this is a great dance for children with simple movements, showing how fun and exciting it can be to teach little ones without requiring complex coordination from them. The heroine continues to tell how Rose was so carried away by the dance that she persuaded the tired Fair to continue, and he agreed, because he also liked it. The emperor, with a slight smile, admits that children their age enjoy such things. Laughing together, they share a moment of joy and fun. His Majesty reflects that with the exception of the exciting lessons of magic and fencing, the children found their studies to be boring cramming of terms. In the evening, under the light of the full moon over the majestic castle, there is hope that Rose and Fair will be able to develop trust and sympathy for Lady Sarah. Fur asks doubtfully if they should do this, but Rose, with a sly smile, assures that of course they should. He remembers the words of Brother Heli, who told them to obey the lady, and in confusion exclaims that although he remembers the order, he still does not want to do it, clearly tormented by contradictions. The boy worries that his brother might scold them again if he finds out, and his brother's words about them listening to Lady Sarah pop into his head. The princess, with slight disdain, states that they will think twice if they are scolded, because according to her, torturing Sarah is too much fun. The girl greets Rosa and Ferriton, joyfully admiring their beautiful outfits, but the children look embarrassed and remain silent. She notices their unnatural behavior and guesses that they are plotting something, especially because they are sitting so diligently at the tables, which is not at all like them. Popo gracefully asks if His Majesty has scolded them, and in response hears an energetic "No." A suspicion arises. Perhaps the twins have something else in mind. There is mischief in her eyes. A satisfied smile indicates that she is glad to hear that the prince and princess have remained honest this time. In this way, she is trying to put pressure on them to show herself in an even better light. The lady looked at them with a soft smile, confidently explaining that she said this because of the importance of the truth. Lies led to serious problems. She added the children tensed, stunned by her sincere concern. Their eyes widened, reflecting mixed feelings of fear and surprise at what they heard. Fair secretly whispers to Rose that they lied to Sarah, and Heli really scolded them. The girl, frowning, thinks that because of the governess, she might stop playing with them. The hero is worried that their lie led the beauty into an anxious state, fearing the consequences of their actions. The girl curiously asks what will happen if someone lies. The teacher, smiling, answers that she will explain. Now she mysteriously adds that the liar's nose will become very long. Her eyes light up with a frightening gleam, and the children begin to worry, imagining the possible consequences of lying. The prince, in a panic, asks his sister if his nose has become longer and what to do. In that case, the young lady playing along with him takes a closer look and agrees that the nose has indeed become longer. Meanwhile, Sarah, hearing their anxious remarks, notices with a smile that even in a whisper, they speak loudly enough for everything to be heard. The teacher looks at the papers with a slight smile. She is slightly distracted, thinking about how to test the knowledge of the young aristocrats. The blonde boy peers at the sheet in surprise, while the white-haired girl cautiously asks herself, "Is it really a test?" Her face and the boy's face reflect concern when the word test echoes in their thoughts. Sarah found herself in an unexpected situation. Two boys suddenly grabbed her with shouts. Overwhelmed with emotions, their embrace was so impulsive that the girl barely kept from falling. Her eyes expressed slight bewilderment, and the thought flashed through her thoughts. Did they really come up with another way to avoid studying? The children panic and smile nervously, saying that they have prepared a gift for the teacher. Their eyes sparkle with excitement but hide their mischief. A gift appears in the teacher's hand. A cockroach, which makes her horrified while the children watch her reaction with an innocent look, pleased with their prank. A young guard in a strict uniform enters the room with concern, loudly asking what happened, noticing the twins. He turns to them, the kids cheerfully point in the direction, making fun of the guards and encouraging them to run and catch the criminal who lies half dead. Rose and her brother laugh and make fun of the guards, pointing out the setup. Jean is confused, not knowing how to react to this unexpected situation, but throws the blade forward, killing the cockroach. Popo stands aside, still in horror. Recently, it was in her pocket and even in her hand. Sarah, worried about the children's strange behavior, finally realizes their true intentions. While they burst into laughter, Bronte carefully asks if Princess Rose and Prince Fair should be punished, but Sarah, with a depressed smile, replies that the discipline of their highnesses is also her responsibility, which means she will be the one to punish. Sarah, holding back her emotions, looks forward, a burning fire inside her heart. Her gaze is firm and determined. An inner fire rises in her, and she decisively throws down the challenge. Let's see which of us will laugh last. Obviously, their highnesses were having fun while they were thinking up their next dirty trick. The lady, with a cold smile, reminds her interlocutors that they have lied to her 3 times, each time promising that it would be the last. Jean, standing nearby, listens to the request to bring a mirror, reacting slightly puzzled to her words, not quite understanding their hidden meaning. Something is wrong there. The child peers anxiously into the mirror the knight has handed him, his eyes reflecting a slight worry as he assesses his own face as if searching for changes. The tutor next to him discreetly reminds him that those who lie have a tendency to have longer noses, emphasizing her suspicions and the moral lesson hidden in the simple words. The girl stands in front of Rose and Fair with a stern expression on her face. She reminds them how she asked them several times if something had happened, but they denied everything, trying to somehow pull off their plan. The dumbfounded twins realize that they are in an awkward situation, and their deception is finally revealed. Holding a mirror in front of the princess, the heroine lightly reproaches her for lying. The beauty, looking in the mirror and touching her face, anxiously realizes that her fiction about lying, lengthening the nose, is beginning to affect her. The girl is shocked because she lied before, but nothing like this happened. Something is wrong here. The children look closely at the mirror, worried about the possible lengthening of their noses. Ferritan, perplexed, quietly admits that his nose really seems to have become longer, which worries him, and nearby Rosa presses her lips together in confusion, suspecting that they are simply being deceived. The teacher, smiling, suggests asking Sir Knight to get an objective opinion on the situation. The twins, feeling hopeful, exclaim in unison that they agree. The knight, slightly embarrassed, understands that he is faced with a difficult task of assessing the strange situation. The heroine winks at the knight, asking him to confirm the truth. She needs her plan to work. She urges him to just look at them and say, if he noticed how their noses have lengthened this way, this little performance can continue. The teacher winks at the knight with a sly expression, asking him to confirm to the children that their noses really did get longer. Because of the lie, the children look at the knight, nervously hoping for an honest answer, and he nods, saying that everything is so. Sarah turns to the knight, asking him to confirm that their noses are not long at all, thereby refuting the suspicions of the prince and princess. The man, slightly embarrassed, confirms that the noses look completely ordinary. The beauty adds that this is proof of their honesty because the noses remain the same. Beauty enthusiastically says that Rosa and Farah's noses have become longer because of their triple lie. Adelio and his brother look in the mirror in dismay, realizing that their little trick has turned into real consequences. The heroine, in despair, asks how to return their noses to their previous appearance. Offering to call a doctor, the governess explains that the doctor is a very busy man, and it is not known when he will appear. The two look at each other in confusion, not knowing how to solve their unexpected problem. They urgently need to tidy themselves up. The beauty looks at the children with a soft smile, holding a piece of paper in her hands, her voice deceptively sweet when she says that if they show diligence in their studies, then she might tell them the information they are interested in. As if in a playful manner, she hints that it depends on them whether they will find out the secret. Half an hour has passed. Popo says that the task can be ignored, but then the long nose will remain forever. Her Majesty, with a frightened face, tightly squeezes the pencil, hastily answering that she will definitely complete the task. The threat works, prompting her to obedience. There is no choice left in any case. The teacher calmly explains to the students how to complete the task, pointing to a sheet of pictures that need to be connected with lines. There are animals depicted there. The prince enthusiastically agrees, confidently stating that this task is easy, while the sister remains focused, thinking about each step. The children happily show off their completed assignments, holding sheets of paper with pictures connected by lines and proudly exclaiming about the completed work. They did it quite quickly. The teacher looks at the sheets of paper, attentively smiling, offers to check what was done and give a grade, ready to encourage their efforts. At first, the governess studies what was handed to her, but then she praised both of them, gently tapping her pencil on the table and noting their efforts in response. The children happily declared that they were very smart. Clearly proud of their work. On the table in front of them lies a sheet of paper with their joint creation, symbolizing their success and diligence. The girl watches the children with a slight smile, noting their intelligence and developed fine motor skills, which allows them to confidently hold a pencil. She is confident that with their good foundation and systematic training, they will quickly grasp new knowledge. The children won't give up so easily. It's time to tell her how to shorten their noses back slightly. Confused, the little ones look at her clearly, trying to remember what happened and why their noses suddenly became longer. Her good nature instills confidence in them, and they listen attentively to the instructions. A boy and a girl are enjoying chocolate, tasting it with delight and immersing themselves in the sweet moment the teacher puts it in their mouths. At the most unexpected moment, their eyes shine with pleasure, and the woman at the table with a soft smile watches them. She explains that the story about noses lengthening from lies is just a fiction, teasing them slightly. The boys, stunned and angry, ask how they could have been deceived, their eyes sparkling with bright colors of surprise and indignation. They try the treat, another portion of chocolate, which turns out to be delicious, and gradually their irritation softens. Popo asks if they are still offended, hinting at reconciliation. The children, happy with the treat, discuss the taste of chocolate among themselves. One of them notes that the chocolate is too sweet and makes you thirsty, but still enjoys its taste. The second, after initially resisting, decides to give in to temptation if they are treated again. She really likes candy. A servant in a smart suit quietly announces that he will be accompanying a guest to the palace today. He introduces himself by bowing with his hand on his chest, his strict and polite tone underscoring his professionalism. Raphael Dempsey. His Majesty's personal assistant looks impeccable and full of confidence in his appointment. The girl, observing the conversation with Raphael, asks about Sir Bronte's employment. The man, politely explaining, confirms that he is busy training, acting as a sparring partner for King Adelio. Hearing this, Popo asks if they practice fencing together regularly. Probably so. The woman, with a thoughtful smile, reflects that brevity may be the sister of wit, but notices that her interlocutor is clearly a man of few words. She wonders if he is bored with her company, but immediately discards this thought and suggests that His Majesty is probably a master swordsman. The young man in glasses immediately changed his expression, and a second later he enthusiastically tells how His Majesty, despite his lack of interest in cold weapons, quickly excelled in fencing, thanks to his innate talent. He shares that the emperor combines divine magic with a soft but businesslike character, which in his opinion is the best thing that could happen to the empire. The heroine looks at Raphael with admiration. Her eyes glow with surprise, and her hands are slightly pressed to her lips. She is amazed to learn that the emperor has divine power. Her words are full of amazement. After all, such an ability is extremely rare and is considered a sign of the love of the gods for their chosen one. The woman, wide-eyed, is amazed by what she has heard and enthusiastically admires His Majesty, calling him a wonderful man, while next to her the man adjusts his glasses and enthusiastically anticipates that their cooperation in the palace will bring only excellent results. The servant informs that His Majesty will be late and asks to wait in the room. The beauty nods in response and sits down at the table, pouring herself a cup of tea. She thoughtfully reflects on how long she will have to wait languidly. Sipping the drink, she wants to sort everything out as soon as possible. The heroine, left alone in the room, thoughtfully examines the furnishings around her. Her gaze catches the refined and luxurious objects on the table, including a musical instrument, an hourglass, and boxes. Thinking with admiration, she understands that everything around must be insanely expensive. The heroine carefully examines a photograph of the family. It depicts the emperor with his wife and their small children looking happy. Looking at this image, she reflects on the age of the current emperor, estimating that he was then about 20. The girl smiles, imagining how perfectly he could fit into this frame if he were standing next to her. A woman looks at a photograph with a soft smile, showing a happy family. The emperor, his wife, and 2 small children. She notes how happy they look in the picture. The inscription at the bottom states that their marriage was an exemplary example, not only in the empire, but also among the ruling families of other countries. Empress Charlotte, from a ducal family known for its impeccable reputation in the emperor and his son. He earned the glory of a just and decent ruler, which only strengthens the people's respect for him. The couple was very different from anyone else. The emperor and his wife did not bind themselves by a political union. They were brought together by true love, which first manifested itself at one of the ceremonial balls. When they realized their feelings, they married united in unity and fidelity. 2 years later, their heir, Prince Helios, was born, who from the very birth was surrounded by an atmosphere of tenderness and care. Emperor Endymion remained a devoted husband throughout his life. There was no room in his heart for anyone other than his wife. No concubine shared his life with him, and his loyalty remained unwavering. He always tried to bow down to the woman, showing how much he loved her. The heroine looks thoughtfully at the photograph, remembering the love story between the emperor and empress, their long journey and trials, their union that withstood time was rewarded with the birth of twins. She feels sadness realizing how early these children lost their parents, and her heart is filled with compassion. The news of the tragic death of the imperial family in a train accident shocked everyone, causing a wave of grief and horror. According to rumors, the cause of the accident was a deliberate murder carried out with the help of magic. The engineer claimed that a spell was cast on him by a red-eyed woman whose image remained in his memory as a ghostly shadow with flaming eyes. Popo understands well she was immersed in the depths of her pain, which once was her whole life. The memories of the loss of her parents covered her with a wave of sadness, returning to those times when she spent a whole week in tears, barely touching food. Her strength was running out. Leaving her without the strength to even just stand up that period made her shake. His Majesty has to endure not only the personal loss of his parents, but also bear responsibility for the country. His grief is intertwined with the weight of his obligations to the people in his thoughts. There is concern for his little brother and sister for whom he is now responsible. He understood even then that something needed to be done. The heroine realizes that now Helios is the only family of twins and tries to replace the love that they lost with their parents. A firm intention appears in her heart to hug Princess Rose and Prince Fair more often to make them feel her care and support. The door opened, which made the beauty distracted from her thoughts, refreshing herself and wiping her face with a towel. The emperor appeared in the door, who looked like the embodiment of elegance and unapproachable coldness. His posture, like a statue, seemed perfect. The woman, confused by his appearance, only breathed out, "Your Majesty." in her thoughts, flashed that perhaps this is why all the aristocrats in the empire are so enchanted by this man. The silver-haired man nods in greeting with a slight grin. The girl next to him, not hiding her admiration, admits her sympathy for him. She notes that it is precisely this charm that makes him attractive to all women, even those who do not think that he is right for them. The emperor, passing a little further, apologizes for the delay. His face expresses lightness, although it is obvious that he is tired. The one standing in front of him replies that the wait has given her only pleasure. She happily took the opportunity to enjoy a cup of excellent tea in anticipation of meeting him. In an elegant room, the emperor is in quiet conversation with Popo, who is sitting opposite him, asking how her day went, referring to Jean's words about the difficulties that had arisen. The girl replies that she does not know the details, and he slightly absent-mindedly admitting that he was busy and hardly heard. Jean looks relaxed and thoughtful. The main character never got around to letting go of the cup of tea, holding back her feelings and telling that there was a minor problem before the lesson started. Just a childish prank, but she didn't plan to mention it. The king, on the contrary, is clearly interested, but sees that it's not worth worrying about. Sarara didn't even plan to tell him anything. The guy with silver hair looks at the woman carefully. His gaze shows concern. He frowns slightly and asks what exactly happened. The brunette, feeling a slight fright, thinks that she foresaw his reaction. She decides that she needs to change the atmosphere to diffuse the situation and prepares for this with a slight smile. Sarara stands in front of His Majesty with slight surprise and concern, feeling like he is taking her by surprise. She awkwardly begins to explain how, after a small incident, she found a cockroach in her pocket, and looks quite embarrassed by this confession, not knowing how Helios will take it, because he thought that his sister and brother would not do such a thing. The girl trembles, remembering her fear from meeting a cockroach. The man, concerned about her condition, asks how scared she was. She, smiling, answers that her fear was so strong that she screamed loudly in a fit of fear. A knight immediately rushed to her, who instantly destroyed the insect, throwing a dagger straight at the wall. Helios looks at his interlocutor with curiosity, noticing her extraordinary professional qualities, but asks with surprise how an ordinary cockroach could frighten her. The girl, embarrassed, admits that although she is a specialist, she has a weakness: insects, which are not so easy to get rid of. The emperor apologizes to Lady Popo for the wait, but she smiles and says she was glad to have the opportunity to enjoy tea in his absence. Then he asks how the day went, and says that he heard about the little one's antics. The lady is sure that it was just an innocent prank, and promises that with each lesson they will behave more calmly. The heroine is visibly concerned that the most important thing has not been forgotten. She confidently opens a folder with documents that contain the results of her comprehensive analysis of the children's level of development. She carefully recorded the data and provided a comparative analysis with other children of their age. The young man, with a slight smile, asks if his interlocutor is comfortable next to him. Her embarrassment is revealed by her red face. She justifies herself that everything is fine. A desire to make fun of her flashes through his thoughts. But he restrains this thought, understanding her embarrassment and caution in communication. The emperor, holding back a burst of laughter, asks her about her personal thoughts about the children. Popo immediately blushes and embarrassedly denies trying to maintain her dignity, but he only teases, enjoying the reaction. Her answer is full of indignation, and she insists that he attend to important documents instead of being distracted by jokes. It is impossible not to notice to oneself that the lady is just as easily provoked as his younger brother and sister. He thinks about the future, imagining how emotional his younger relatives will become when they grow up, and whether they will be like her. Lady Popo points confidently to the graph, explaining to His Majesty the development level of their highnesses, Princess Rose and Prince Fer. She emphasizes that their abilities are already in the top 5% of her students, and despite their young age, they are outperforming their peers in academic tasks that were quite difficult. The young man smiles as his governess praises the achievements of his younger family members, confirming that they are as talented as he was at their age. He slightly embarrassedly assumes that someone close to him has already told him about his successes, which has become something expected for him. Raphael loves to chat about how wonderful Helios is. The heroine nods. She has already noticed that this is how it is. The hero always enthusiastically discusses his favorite topic, while his companion notes how his enthusiasm has decorated their journey to the imperial palace. Thanks to his talkativeness, the path seemed to her much shorter and more pleasant than expected. It's time to move on to something more important. Sarara again calmly lays out documents on the table which reflect the children's achievements but already in other classes. When they discussed the kids' successes, she wants to present a further training program. The lady notes that a new stage will begin with their next lesson, outlining a clear development plan. The woman presents a well-thought-out educational plan for the twins with even greater confidence, showing off every detail with slight pride. His Majesty listens attentively, assessing the plan as brilliant, while inwardly the girl slyly thinks that her program is, of course, magnificent since it was developed by Korean professors and not by her. For obvious reasons, Sarara will not be able to teach magic and fencing lessons. She has no power. There will be no effect. The young man nods, agreeing with her words, and remembering that they have already discussed this before a businesslike atmosphere reigns in the room, emphasizing the seriousness of the issue under discussion. The teacher looks at her interlocutor, attentively explaining that they need to return to the topic, adding that she wants to temporarily suspend teaching these subjects, since it is now important to focus on the basics so as not to overload the students for them. Even the beginning of re-education will already be too much. Now the children are sleeping peacefully, but this does not always happen. The woman notices their difficulties and addresses her interlocutor with understanding, offering to postpone their teaching other subjects until a trusting relationship is established. The hero agrees, and Popo sincerely thanks him, rejoicing at the support. At this point, their conversation is over. She is getting ready to go home. It was early morning. Rose and Fur were lying on the floor discussing how they could play a prank today. The girl, with a sly expression on her face, shared her thoughts with her brother, and he, cheerfully rising, asked if it was worth playing a prank on Sarah. Their eyes sparkled with mischief, clearly anticipating another funny prank. The twins eagerly discuss their governess, noting that Sarah has been teaching them for 2 weeks now, coming to the castle on schedule. They remember how much fun it was to tease her and wish that she would come to them earlier because today should be just as great. Fair and Rosa look at each other with a conspiratorial glint in their eyes that never went away. The prince smilingly remembers their pranks on Sarah, and the princess, laughing, joins in. They discuss how funny it was to watch her reaction, especially when they put a cockroach in her pocket. The boys can't help but remember how they glued Popo's suitcase to the table. The girl, laughing, tells how she tried to tear it off. The expression on her face still flashes in her eyes. The brother suggests repeating this prank. It can be used at least once more, perhaps even in the near future. The boy with blonde hair talks about the qualities of their governess. They always have fun, and she never gets angry, like the others. Those who ran away before the lessons she gives seem interesting to him. The boy also notices that Sarah is beautiful, like his Helly. His sister listens to him, clearly lost in her thoughts, but still seems to nod. Fair and Rosa discuss their governess Sarah. The boy admits that he even likes her a little, and his embarrassed sincerity surprises his sister. The girl asks again, incredulously, which causes a slight expression of irritation and thoughtfulness to appear on her face while the young man remains cheerfully calm. The heroine still does not understand what exactly is wrong, but she feels sincere sympathy for the new mentor, recognizing her kindness and worthy of trust thoughts are full of respect, because if the woman was brought by Helly's brother, then she can be trusted and relied on. She is different from others. The twins continue to discuss their governess, noting that she is different from the others because her lessons are not boring. Her games are exciting and sweets are available. But doubt flashes in the princess's words, and she hints that Ferreton may be suggesting that they stop making fun of her. He hurries to justify himself, saying that this is not what he meant at all, and admitting that he is worried. Suddenly, her pranks will one day force the governess to leave. Rosa, looking down, confesses to her brother that she also does not want Popo to leave them, but she is worried that the governess seems to have come between them and Helly, disrupting the usual harmony that had almost been established. The young man listens attentively, realizing the depth of his sister's concern. The boys can't forget how their lives have changed since Sarah arrived. Because the difference is big, the princess admits that they now fall asleep earlier, and Helly's brother no longer comes to put them to bed, which seems to her the most terrible thing. Fear glimmers in her heart. She doesn't want any of her loved ones to disappear like Mom and Dad. A tragedy has already happened to them. They can't bear great losses. Jean, who had called the twins beforehand, bursts into the room. The young officer is relieved to find that the children are there. His face expresses joy and slight fatigue, and he wipes away the sweat and sighs. Today, happiness has befallen him. None of them have run away, although usually finding the little ones is a quest almost impossible. The young man notices with relief that the children are there, expressing joy that he did not have to look for them. The twins, however, show their disappointment, realizing that Helly did not come again. Apparently, the young man is so busy that he could not even spare a few extra hours. It seems that he does not have time almost every day. The children clung tightly to Bronte, listening hopefully to his words, which assure them that their brother will definitely visit his sister and brother in the evening, to which the boy relaxes, and the girl, still anxiously clutching his clothes, quietly asks what will happen if Adelio still does not come. He may have even more important things to do. The blonde looks with slight surprise and hope, assuring that there will be enough time. After all, while they are studying with Lady Sarah, the hours fly by unnoticed. He promises that the maiden will come soon, convincing the kids not to worry. However, Rosalina, worried, asks again how much longer to wait. Jean, with a smile, reassures that their guest is usually not late and will be here soon. She probably had her own reason. Fer and Rose exchange sly glances because the words that the lady is a little late today, presumably 10 minutes, make them laugh. Their faces literally light up because such a delay gives them the opportunity to make plans behind them. The guard, Jean, watches with interest, and the twins, beaming, ask him about the governess, trying to find out more about her and making sweet eyes. Bronte scratches his head in embarrassment, admitting that he himself knows almost nothing about Sir, and does not even know what to tell. Rose, beaming with curiosity, immediately invites him to tell at least something interesting about her, enthusiastically expecting at least the slightest detail that will ultimately serve as a good ending to the situation. The officer, with a smile on his face, recalls how the lady once mentioned that she did not possess magic, which surprised even the king himself. His words evoke the same emotions in the listeners. They are perplexed. How is it possible? After all, in their world, the energy of the flow occupies an important place. Almost everyone possesses it. The beauty has many good and even bad character traits. Thinking about her fear of heights and inability to ride a horse, the man continues a short list. The twins exchange glances. Their faces express a mischievous mood. Very soon they understand that they have found a common plan and hitting their fists against each other, as if concluding an alliance in their little conspiracy. The plan has not yet been devised, but the kids are gradually building a scenario for how events will unfold. They want to use magic to make the beauty overcome her fear of heights, and both are eagerly awaiting her reaction, which will certainly not be positive. It is clear that after a while she will change her mind. With a smile on his face, the man in military uniform, turning to the children, exclaims. But after a second, his expression changes. It all depends on how he sets priorities. Surprised, he waves his hands, not understanding whether their highnesses are really going to use the information received against Lady Sarah. The girl, with a serious expression, claims that she and her brother are good kids, her expression full of confidence and honesty, but fake. Her brother next to her adds that they really are, and Jean, standing in front of them, apparently understands that he made a big mistake, and his face expresses despair and confusion because now Sarara will get it based on his fears. The man looks at his watch with concern, realizing that Helios has an important meeting scheduled very soon. It cannot be cancelled. He is obliged to accompany the guy and understands that he will not be able to stay to warn the lady, which means he will have to work with what he has. Now thoughts of urgency and the impossibility of fulfilling everything he has planned cause him anxiety. There is very little time left. The man tensely warns the children that their plans are unacceptable and it doesn't even matter what their thoughts are. They pretend, with mischievous smiles and sparkling eyes, that his threat does not frighten them. On the contrary, it only arouses greater interest after a few seconds. The guy realizes with horror that his words seem to have only fueled their excitement. The young man with golden hair is cowering against the wall, head down clearly. Confused, his eyes are full of horror and his body is shaking. Popo has just arrived at the castle. She was in a good mood, but her smile has faded, revealing worried features. She approaches him kneeling down and gently puts her hand on his shoulder, asking about his well-being and where Princess Rose is. It is important to find out as many details as possible. The child, with a trembling voice and tears streaming down her cheeks desperately, calls out to Sarah. Her green eyes are full of fear and her face expresses helplessness and despair. She presses herself against the top of the ceiling, as if trying to find support, and quietly whispers that she is very scared. How she got up there is unclear, but the governess understands that it is very high up there. Sarah tries to calm the little girl, who, in a panic with her eyes closed, does not dare to look down, still feeling even worse. She reaches out to her, her voice filled with softness and care. Then the woman insistently asks the princess to stop crying and pay attention to her, assuring that everything will be fine. This place will still be safe. There is nothing left to do but continue to call for help, leaving herself no chance. Tears flow down her face even more. It seems like hysteria is starting. The beauty is scared and defenseless. Her anxiety is overwhelming. An adult figure appears next to her, trying to understand how something so frightening could happen. The feeling of danger is growing. Magic with unstable mana carries a risk, and the heroine begins to realize the possible consequences of carelessness. It is clear that she cannot blame the child in any way, but it is still quite strange. Adults who have already mastered the art of magic understand how to control its power. It is so great that not everyone can easily cope with it. Mana exists in their bodies from birth, but it takes a lot of effort to bring it into harmony, directing the flows of magical energy in the right direction. This takes a little more time. Of course, small children do not have this opportunity. They always have more problems with control. Each time they are different. Usually people can start good control only after reaching 14 years old. Such are the terms of the deal after the birth of a baby with force. If you take a risk and start using mana before the appointed time without being under the supervision of adults, more problems will arise. The uneven distribution of energy makes it difficult to control, leaving a situation that is most often almost impossible to correct. The girl tensely holds herself on the edge, barely containing her irritation at the terrible turn of the situation. Determination can be read in her eyes, reinforced by the thought that they clearly did not control the magic when they planned another prank to annoy her. She barely suppresses indignation, waiting for what will happen next. The girl tries to understand what happened in this corridor. She suspects that those who tried to harm her apparently could not cope with magic. She understands that the original reason is in her too soft attitude towards them, and now she needs to reconsider her behavior in order to prevent such situations in the future, forcing children to obey every word. Sarah quickly thinks over the plan of action, for now everything doesn't seem so simple to her. She knows that first, she needs to save the princess. Her eyes reflect determination mixed with anxiety, which she tries to hide. Ferritin, still not looking up from the skirt, looks at Sarara with hope, asking with a trembling voice, "Quickly save your sister." The girl, realizing that this will speed up the resolution of the situation, explains that having learned about the weakness of her interlocutor, she decided to play a joke using her magical powers, but she distributed the mana incorrectly, and now she is stuck at a height and cannot descend herself. Regret about the unsuccessful prank slips into her voice. She should have behaved more decently. Sarah tries to calm everyone down, asking them to cool down a little first, but the situation escalates. The little girl still desperately asks for help. Her fear grows, so the screams become louder. The little prince squeezes the governess's hand, not wanting to let go, begging not to call anyone. He already has an idea in his head of what will happen next. The silver-haired boy looks tense, a shadow of worry lights up his face. He tells that Helly's brother will be furious if he finds out about the use of magic. The twins made a promise not to use mana until the end of their training, and the king will definitely not forgive this because for the first time he decided to trust them completely, removing himself from the process. The girl, worried by what was said, decides to keep what happened a secret, asking to wait a little while. She calls someone to help, one of the servants, who will definitely not report anything in response. A frightened voice is heard, thin, interrupted by sobs. It begs her not to go and not to leave them alone. The blonde girl, with an exhausted look, hangs in the air, barely holding on to that beam. Her thoughts are completely mixed up, but the heroine cannot allow herself to do something wrong. A solution emerges. In order to help Adelio Jr., she must first calm down, who is standing nearby in confusion. He makes a lot of noise, making the girl even more nervous. The dark-haired woman, calmly holding Ferreton's hand, gently suggests that he take a deep breath in and out to calm himself. The little boy follows her advice, breathing in and out slowly, while the governess patiently supports him, repeating, "That's right. Inhale, exhale. Just a little bit more." After a few more minutes have passed, the beauty, holding his face with both hands as if trying to calm him down, promises to take her sister down, but emphasizes that for this, she needs the help of Adelio himself. She definitely cannot cope on her own. The boy looks at her with slight confusion and determination. The young man looks at his interlocutor in surprise, stunned, asking if he really needs help and how exactly to do it. The words seem unreal to him, but the desire to be a part of history makes his consciousness rejoice. A firm confidence is visible in his gaze, and the aristocrat confirms that it is he who must help her get Princess Rose down. The girl, stuck high above the floor, anxiously asks for help once again, as if reminding him of her situation, repeating that she is scared. The woman nods and turns to the prince. She explains that she just needs to let her go, but asks to stay nearby in case of danger. As soon as the child follows the instructions, the heroine smiles with approval and praises the prince, calling him a good boy. The girl ponders how to reach the ceiling. Pondering her actions, she turns her attention to the table with cubes lying on the surface. It is not so far away to reach. Without losing determination, she moves the furniture to the side and climbs up, offering Princess Rose to reach for her to help her down, confidently extending her hand for support. The woman looks up at the ceiling, wondering how to reach the child. Confident in herself, she resolutely reaches out her hand because a good plan has formed in her head. She is already ready to support the girl, which she really needs. Now the baby looks at her, trying to calm down, but fear is still visible in her eyes. Sarah carefully lifts the princess, looking into her eyes with a slight smile, encouraging her with words. Not having time to keep her balance, both begin to fall. The heel tripped over the tip of this table. Fur anxiously watches the situation and shouts, "Be careful!" But his words are lost somewhere in the air. Nothing worked in the end. The situation ended as it should have from the very beginning. The two are lying on the floor, hugging each other. The blow has already happened. Nothing can be fixed. The aristocrat gets to her feet after falling, overcome with excitement and concern for Her Majesty. The young man looks at them with anxiety and shouts out their names, expressing concern, supports Rose. The beauty gently asks if she is able to get up. Her gaze is full of concern and her voice is soft. Sarah stands in front of the child, her face covered in blood after the fall, but she looks confident and calm. The prince, looking at her with fear, tries to express concern, but the woman calmly replies that she is fine, trying to calm the twins. Hiding the obvious is quite difficult, but not impossible. Hiding her pain behind a calm look, Popo carefully asks the little girl if she is in pain. Although she does not seem to have hit anything, hiding her tears, she assures that she does not feel pain, but her anxiety increases when she realizes what she has done. The governess, assessing the situation, guesses that she hit her head on the sharp corner of a cube lying on the floor in front of her. Sarah is struggling to keep her balance, covering her face with her hand and feeling very dizzy, which prevents her from thinking normally. Fur and Rosa, worried about her condition, scream in panic, fearing for her life. Their despair and fear become unbearable, and they beg her not to die, clinging tightly to her clothes, as if trying to keep her in this world. It is clear that if everything was so serious, nothing would help, but in this case they can try. Despite the bleeding, she assures the children that she will not die. But it is difficult to stand still. With each passing second, the situation is getting worse. The pain is spreading throughout the body. She reminds them that these are the consequences of their pranks, which their brother warned them about, emphasizing the seriousness of the situation. They should have listened instead of doing amateur activities for the sake of ordinary fun. The children's expressions do not change. They still look worriedly at the governess, who assures them that she will not die. Although she admits that the situation could have ended differently, relief is visible in their eyes, but also a slight fear for the teacher, realizing that their pranks could have led to much worse consequences. They were just lucky that the situation was resolved this way. Sarah, still understanding the state of the children, restrainedly suggests that they wipe away their tears and tidy themselves up while she takes care of her wound, which is still bleeding heavily. Despite her injuries, she maintains firmness and control over the situation, showing the children an example of resilience and responsibility. The room is silent. The maid sits quietly, while one of the maids tends to the wound. She is worried that the bandages on her forehead will not attract attention, because of which she carefully asks how serious the cut is. Perhaps it will be possible to remove any traces. The helpful assistant reassures her, assuring that it is only a small cut, but a bandage is needed as it is bleeding. A slight confusion appears on her face after the words about a possible scar. The smile becomes a little strained, but the lady jokingly notes that divine power would quickly solve the problem. Alas, such a thing is beyond the maid's power. Inside, the heroine sighs, dreaming that power would save her from pain and scar, but there is no harm in dreaming. The woman tries to calm the worried maid down with a smile, assuring her that everything is fine. The lady laughs slightly, promising to return if she needs help. For now it is time for her to return to their highnesses. It is better not to postpone because they are sitting alone, and after everything that happened they can cause even more problems, or on the contrary get psychological trauma. Giving the twins, who were soaking wet from head to toe, a stern look, the woman chuckled. Guilt was evident on their faces. They slowly apologized to Sarah, lowering their heads. The girl asked in a restrained manner why their highnesses were apologizing. She needed to hear a full explanation. Otherwise it would not be accepted. Such were the new terms of the deal that had been established. The heroine watches with an expression of sadness as two children, who crying sincerely, apologize to her. She strongly restrains the desire to console them, to wipe away their tears, but understands that it is too early. It is worth waiting just a little longer. Then she asks if they have drawn conclusions from what happened, to which the children in tears promise not to do this again. Now each of them will always obey and behave as correctly as possible without causing mischief. Finally, she managed to hear what she wanted, touching their faces and looking into their eyes with persistence and care. The woman asks if they are really ready to obey her rose, and the boy nod, and seeing a pleasant expression on her face, suddenly cry, throwing themselves into her arms. The lady gently embraces them, covering them in her arms. Everything ended more than well. Sarah smiles, feeling their sincere remorse and guilt for what happened. Tears drip onto her dress, but her smile remains warm. She whispers to them that she believes in their promises and everything will be fine. The most important thing is that she is okay, and the children were not hurt either. The guys cannot help but see in the girl their mother, who also always took care of them, not paying attention to her condition and other affairs. The boy and girl wipe away their tears, complaining that their eyes sting from crying. They have been crying for an hour, and now they understand the consequences that they did not expect. A feeling of guilt and fatigue from emotional stress grows in them. The woman looking at them understands that this cannot continue any longer, and decisively decides to intervene, comes closer, gently touching Rosalina, promising that he will not go anywhere and will return soon, as if calming her with a warm smile and a confident look. A few minutes fly by unnoticed. Lady Popo opens the door, apologizing for her appearance in the room. She is met by a young maid who looks at her in surprise. wondering what she needs. Surely there must be some meaning in this. The girl calmly explains that she needs some ice and a towel, and also offers to bring cold drinks or water. This is already intended for their highnesses. The request sounds confident with a slight hint of concern for someone who needs her help. Two children sitting next to each other and drinking drinks through straws, staring ahead with guilty faces, their eyes swollen, but still expressing embarrassment and slight confusion. What happened has definitely left its mark. The girl in an elegant black dress looks at them with a slight smile and wonders if she was too strict considering her unusual gentleness. That was with her all this time. She assures herself that she did the right thing, because of them, she got seriously hurt. Sarara carefully holds the cold ice cubes wrapped in cloth and applies them to the children's eyes. Their foreheads are burning, probably because of what they had to endure. The boy and girl exclaim at the same time in surprise. Feeling the sharp cold, the bags make them scream. But then both smile, enjoying this refreshing feeling that helps relieve the fatigue of tears. For a moment, it is worth admitting that they are pleased. The first thing the heroine did was rummage through her bag to find the materials she had prepared. Sarara, with a slight smile, holds a book in her hands, noting that the atmosphere has changed a little, which is really for the better. She announces to the children that they have a math lesson today. Energetic and curious, they immediately reach for the study table, excitedly exclaiming that they want to look at the cubes that the lady laid out. Night envelops the majestic castle building. Its windows glow with a soft light under the starry sky. Inside, a woman with long, dark hair, sitting by candlelight, reads a book to her charges, comfortably settled in bed. Her voice quietly narrates about a girl who went on a journey with her animal friends. Such a story seems primitive, but for the kids, it is extremely interesting. Adventures have always attracted their attention. In the classroom, the children, tired after the day, fell asleep under the soft light of the night lamp. Finally, this day is over. The heroine asked to bring the bed here so that it would be a little easier. The teacher carefully adjusts the bed, noticing how hard they worked on math today, solving problems and asking when something was unclear. She is proud of their diligence and plans to teach them to rest in their rooms. Gradually, something new needs to be added. Sarah is standing by the bed of a child who cannot fall asleep. She was about to leave, but she was stopped, so she had to stay. She wonders why sleep does not come. The little girl admitted that the morning incident shook her a lot. She has already apologized, and even repeatedly, but now she asks for forgiveness again, realizing her guilt for the injury in response. The governess gently strokes her head, feeling a desire to console. The twin can't stop looking anxiously into her eyes. The woman doesn't know what else to say except to assure that everything is fine because she has already apologized. However, Popo promises to look after them more closely in the future. Before this, she was too good, allowing them to do whatever their heart desires. Nodding, the blonde suddenly asks if they will tell Helios about what happened. It became clear that this is what worries her the most. The heroine cannot refuse what needs to be said. She again calms the girl, assuring that she will not tell her brother about what happened, because they both tried hard. Despite their prank, the lesson went well. The look is kind and caring, but in the words, you can hear a quiet request to be more careful in the future. Ending the conversation, she says goodbye and wishes good night, leaving the room in silence. It's time to go home. The lady will not stay overnight. It's time to talk calmly with His Majesty, as usual. You can't skip a report, otherwise the consequences will be worse than anything. Before Sir watches the lady, with a stern expression, whose gaze is tense. She takes a sip of tea, trying to calm down, but her inner thoughts betray anxiety. Her heart beats faster and faster, and she tries to convince herself that he is only looking at her forehead and not at her, although this is also not to her advantage considering the plaster. The silver-haired man is tired of being silent. A question has finally matured in his head. He asks about the wound because he sees that something happened, hiding the beauty with a drop of awkwardness. She answers with a smile that she just fell mentally, noting that this is the third time that day when she has to lie. Humor softens the tension, but the conversation is not over yet. You can consider that everything is still ahead. Two of the king's closest servants reacted with alarm to Popo's injury, exclaiming in turn, with concern, it happened literally. Half an hour before the meeting, sitting at the table, she tries to hide her discomfort, claiming that everything is fine. Despite her painful appearance, finally unable to bear it, she presses her hand to her forehead, experiencing a sharp pain that seems to overwhelm her consciousness, reaching her brain, showing how much she is actually suffering. Helios studies his interlocutor with a worried look. His hand seems to be stuck to his forehead. He asks if she is in pain, to which she replies that everything is fine. It is just a little unpleasant to move each time the sharp feelings remind him of the cut. The hero asks if he can look at her wound, but is reminded that there is a bandage there. The girl wriggles as if trying to avoid further attention to her injury. The woman looks back attentively, not quite understanding what the next steps will be and trying to hide her excitement, but his closeness confuses her. The young man still pays attention to the bandage and carefully touches the wound, carefully examining the forehead, then quietly says that the cut is not too deep and does not bleed, which means it will pass very soon. The lady feels relief, but internally struggles with the feelings that his attention to the condition causes. Lady Popo looks at him in surprise when the guy offers to heal her. Her eyes wide in surprise, she is slightly embarrassed. The emperor approaches to examine the wound, and the lady notes that he is so close that she feels uneasy. Magical powers manifest surrounding her with light and symbols, and she remembers the words that the emperor possesses divine power. Raphael repeatedly mentioned this when he gave in to the desire to tell the whole story of the man's life. Still, he manages to touch his forehead because the heroine is distracted, but she abruptly moves away, embarrassed by such close contact. Her face shows obvious confusion. The confusion is reflected in her words. She doubts whether to accept his offer, but he remains calm and confident, assuring that his mana will not be harmed by one healing, and reminds her of his responsibility as an employer. Adelio tells her that the help can be considered as an alternative payment for the treatment of injuries received at work. There is nothing wrong with that. His gaze is calm and focused, as if he leaves no room for refusal, and also adds that if something like this happens again, it will make him worry. There is concern in his tone, hidden behind the external coldness. He just presses until the very end. The main character looks away in embarrassment, but despite her protests, the boy confidently says that the wound cannot be left without help, even if the maid has already said something. He touches her forehead, promising that the healing will take very little time. She barely holds back her feelings, embarrassed by his closeness. His fingers are shrouded in a glowing aura. Magic gradually comes out and more sparks appear in the air. After a few seconds, everything stops. The young man offers to touch his face to check the quality of the work. The girl smiles with gratitude, realizing that the pain has really disappeared. She feels relief and surprise. Her face lights up with joy. With slight embarrassment, she expresses sincere gratitude to her interlocutor. Her eyes shine. There is a price to pay for everything, even for the lack of retribution from other people. She tries to remain calm in front of His Majesty, but the look and question that escapes from his lips confuse her a little. He asks about the fall, bending slightly to catch the slightest change in her expression. He wants to understand what happened. It is difficult to believe a lie to fall so as to get a cut is quite problematic. The girl understands that lying to the emperor is a great sin, because in general it is better to be honest with everyone she would like to tell, but still remembers how sincere trust and joy burned in the children's eyes when she promised that she would never tell anything for the sake of the children. She is ready to turn a blind eye to their pranks. This is the iron rule of all teachers: to protect their students even if it requires small sacrifices, and always keep their promise without changing anything. Helios, holding back a slight smile, reflects on the naivety of the beauty standing opposite him. Interest flashes in his eyes. He does not believe her excuses internally. The man wonders how she will behave if he comes even closer. There are only a few steps left to understand how this whole situation will end. Her embarrassment and attempts to distance herself are clearly amusing, making him enjoy the situation, checking her reaction, which is getting worse with each passing second. Bowing his head, His Majesty smiles now. It is clear that something has changed. The blonde asks if his youngest did something. It is obvious that this is just a cover because there is no one else except their highnesses who would allow something like this terrible to be done to a beauty. The girl tries to avoid eye contact, but the hero follows her every movement, completely copying them. The lady screams that she would never dare to lie to the king. This is a terrible act. Finally calming down, the young man sits back down on the chair and snorts. If that's how it all ended, he's not going to ask about more. His attractive face is too dangerous. The lady almost succumbed to the spell that was going to take over her mind, quickly looking into her bag. The beauty takes out several sheets of paper. No one has canceled the report. Despite recent events today, the guys studied numbers, simple arithmetic, imperial language, Adelio etiquette, and even acting. Popo puts Rosalina's drawing in one hand and Ferreton's in the other. On one side, there is a picture of Sarara, and on the other, the twins jumping in the mud looking into His Majesty's eyes. The girl asks what he sees, laughing lightly. He notices that there is Sarara's first day when everything did not end very favorably. The girl nods, of course it is true. But it remains to guess who is the hero who drew the picture. The blonde guessed that the drawing on the left belonged to his sister, and on the right, to his brother. It is worth noting that His Majesty draws much better than the beauty usually when they compare assignments at the end of classes. The girls are better than the boys. This time the situation was reversed. There is no need to worry in any case. In the end, it is worth mentioning that for each person everything is considered individual. The drawings are handed over to the man. He looks at all the details with interest. Rosalina is more lively and restless, but the prince is more sensitive. He has a kind heart that is easily hurt. The character of each was well revealed on paper. This helped to understand what to do next. Smiling, the blonde blushes slightly. He noticed that the teacher understands the children well. Although she did not spend much time with them, the situation shows talent well. The conversation continues. The heroine, as usual, tells everything that happened during the past day, realizing that the young man is even more interested than he was before their highnesses danced tirelessly, which made them tired. After that, they went to bed. The interlocutor cannot hold back a light laugh which bursts out on its own. There is a knock, after which the door opens and Raphael's head appears. There he adjusts his glasses, reminding that the time has long passed, 10 o'clock in the evening. The young man blinks his eyes in surprise. It is obvious that several hours have passed too unnoticed, which leaves a strange feeling. The girl comes to her senses, starting to collect all the papers back into her bag. A few minutes later, the heroine was completely collected with His Majesty's permission. She leaves hiding at the end of a long corridor. The servant turns to the blonde, asking if he remembers the fact that it is better to let a woman go before 10 o'clock. The road home is not short. She also needs rest, which will help her come the next day with renewed strength. The man looks like he doesn't care. He calmly suggests that the young man has asked him to behave differently 3 times. The brunette starts shouting even more, because in fact he mentioned it 10 times. He, unlike his master, understands that Popo is very tired. The bruises under her eyes are starting to appear more and more, and there is no one to take care of her health. While Raphael was muttering something, the interlocutor managed to get dressed, throwing on the last element in the form of his robe. He promises that he will have to soon. Obviously, he was going to head to the palace to their highnesses near the entrance. The young man is already met by one of the maids. It is so strange, but after the arrival of Sarara, the younger ones began to fall asleep very early, and they still do not think to demand to bring Helios, who usually watched them. Walking forward, the hero greets the brunette, who clearly looks a little embarrassed. Her face reflects a strange expression that is impossible to understand. Lowering his voice, the former crown prince asks, "What happened this afternoon?" He wants to know the situation better. Popo still hasn't screwed up. He'll have to improvise somehow. The maid snorts. She can't know for sure, but she remembers hearing screams and crying. An incident occurred that may have influenced the events. It was because of everything that happened that the lady got her wound on her forehead. The heroine most likely got more problems because of the twins, although she says how everything was fine. The emperor exhales irritably. He understood everything earlier, but hearing the words directly is a little different. It's good that the lady was cured and then allowed to help with magic. The infection that could have occurred is no joke. The guys seem to have not taken into account that some games or dirty tricks end on a bad note. Entering the room, the king tries to be as quiet as possible. His steps are almost inaudible. His thoughts are spinning only about the decision that as soon as the sister and brother wake up, they will need to be scolded. The brain empties itself as soon as a sweet picture opens before his eyes. The twins are sleeping in bed, hugging each other and smiling slightly. The young man did not expect that the governess would ask to put a bed in the room for study. Fingers gently touch the baby's hand, which makes him open his eyes. A quiet voice calls Helly by name. Thoughts inside are frantically moving because the situation is taking a turn for the worse. Smiling, the boy asks to go to bed. He still has hope that he will not do anything. Of course, everything is happening in the order of things. The boy immediately begins to shake his sister, shouting that the king has finally visited them. The little girl doesn't understand at first. She's sleeping so soundly that she's just mumbling something. But after a few seconds, she jumps up sharply, doing it exactly the same way as her brother. They both climb to hug when Adelio asks if they had a good day. In those few seconds, he managed to understand that it looks like sleep is cancelled. There's no choice in any case, since he's not used to saying no to the little ones. Rosalina's expression changes. She looks like something is wrong. Her voice lowered, and then the beauty clarified whether Sarara was told anything. She wants to understand what happened, to know if she needs to apologize. Obviously, the lady lied after all. There is nothing unusual about it, but this does not change the situation one bit. Nodding quietly, the hero only clarifies that today in class, the guys tried hard. The woman praised them, showing the results of writing and reading, and also handed over the drawings. A little girl with wide green eyes turns to her brother Helly, asking again if it is true what the girl said, that they tried very hard. She does not fully believe it. Surprise and delight can be heard in the words, because the girl not only kept her promise but also praised them in front of her older brother. Her face glows with happiness because this praise meant much more than just words of support. The little princess looked down. Happiness had evaporated somewhere. Feelings were too mixed up, and there was only remorse. She was really sorry that the brunette suffered because of their prank. She thought about how in the future she should be kinder to the governess, gently stroking her head. Her brother asks why the mood has changed. He is also glad that such a talented and kind woman takes care of his dear twins despite all the difficulties. The heroine, with a drop of embarrassment and slight excitement, cleverly tries to justify herself to the emperor. His words awaken anxiety in her. Perhaps the girl really did not tell him something. Although everything seemed to be resolved in the best possible way, she quickly exclaims, No, this is... Confusion can be read in her eyes, and a slight blush appears on her cheeks, giving her an even more touching look. The twins have moved back to bed. They are discussing that it is time for them to go to bed because children's time is over, although in fact, this is not their desire at all. Their eyes shine with a request when one of them asks his brother if he will lie down with them for a while. Slightly embarrassed and confused, the young man responds to their sincere requests. One little one even asks for Helly to stroke them, hoping for his warm presence. The last thing you almost want to beg for is to read him a bedtime story. Something like that will probably help, especially if you speak in a calm voice. The kids, as always, cannot hide their delight at his arrival and cling to every word or the slightest drop of presence looking at them. The hero notes with slight annoyance to himself that the kids are so happy to see him that they don't seem to even think about falling asleep. The king looks at the book with the inscription, Gavin's Wealth, in surprise, as if he sees it for the first time. A slight interest flashes in his eyes, although skepticism, one of the twins lying in bed and raising himself enthusiastically, tells that the publication talks about how a 7-year-old boy catches thieves. This adds a little liveliness and inspiration to their evening conversations, allowing the children to feel like heroes. The blonde is amazed to learn that the book he is holding is written by Sarah herself. His eyes light up with admiration because she is not only a teacher, but also a talented writer. Then, under the calm night sky, the story unfolds about a boy named Gavin. He was the youngest child in his family and lived in a small village, which immediately gives the story a warm and simple atmosphere. The very next morning the maiden arrived at the castle. She watched with delight the children's shining eyes, which glowed with such innocent joy that the girl's heart sank. It was hard for her to resist, and she thought with admiration that these little ones were like puppies. They were so cute and spontaneous. A thought flashed through her head, how lucky she was to work with such wonderful children, and her face was lit up with a gentle smile, full of love and care. She will have to wonder for a long time about such a strong affection from the children. She wonders if this is a dream, since she recently scolded them seriously, thinking that this would shake their idyll of relations. A little joy fills her, realizing that the tension that could have arisen between them is absent. Holding hands, one of the children calls the heroine, and she asks to sit at the desks until she returns, teasing that they are not going to follow her even to the toilet. The heroine leads two little children by the hand, surrounded by warmth and care. The children, clinging closely to her, confirm with smiles that Sarah is always waiting for them, not leaving them for a moment. She notices that the children are especially diligent today, surprised by their reluctance to move away from her even a step. The lady even jokingly asks if they plan to obey her and not make mischief. The twins laugh happily, looking with sincere affection. One of them confidently declares that they always keep their promises, and the second adds that they really like the teacher. Shining smiles and lively laughter fill the space with warmth, emphasizing their trust and sympathy for the teacher who seems to have earned their respect and love. With a serious face, they assure that they will study hard now and are not going to be naughty anymore. One of them adds that yesterday Rose decided so, and they promised not to joke anymore. Words show that they are ready to improve and follow the promise, demonstrating a desire to become better. The heroine cannot help but rejoice at this outcome of events. She says that she likes them too, and suggests that they quickly begin the lesson. Their highnesses happily agree, filled with enthusiasm. The bright sun shines in the sky, indicating a special day that they will spend together, completing the lessons they started the day before. Rose and her brother are sitting at a large table surrounded by paper and pencils, trying to create their creations. Her Majesty's gaze is directed at the paper flower that the teacher has skillfully folded for them in her eyes. There is admiration and a little sadness. The flower made by herself looks clumsy and unattractive. Now they continue their origami art competition, sitting at the table and holding pieces of paper in their hands. The young man smiles cheerfully, showing his origami, and claiming that his work looks better and more like a real flower. The sister, on the contrary, frowned. She was irritated by her brother's brave confidence, but she reservedly sparkled with her gaze. The woman encourages them, assuring them that they both did a great job and expressing confidence that the king will be very happy to receive their handicrafts. The little girl, surprised and delighted, exclaims with slight disbelief, "Really?" A spark of hope and pride for her work appears on her face, although just a second ago she wanted to cry. The children are busy preparing cards when one of them has a question. He wonders what day it is and why it is considered special, since they are giving gifts in the form of flowers. The child is surprised to notice that Helly's birthday is still far away. Expressing doubts, they discuss what made the heroine give them such an activity. They are left surprised and a little puzzled. None of them can remember anything special. Although the brunette clarifies associated with this date, the heroine's internal monologue reveals that in her past world, this day was celebrated as Parents' Day, which evokes warm memories in her. Usually on this holiday, children thanked their parents for their love and care. Children solemnly pinned medals on their chests, symbolizing their gratitude and respect. These thoughts permeated her inner nostalgia for bygone days and customs. Everything was better in the past. For some reason, the beauty is sure that the emperor will be happy with a card of gratitude from his youngest. Even though there are many flowers around the palace, the brunette decided that a beautiful handicraft made with her own hands will touch Helios's heart more, thus making him happy. Sarah holds a card decorated with a cute flower and looks at the children with a smile, encouraging them. She warmly asks them to take their cards and write something special for the emperor. Inside, her voice is full of tenderness and care, and her gaze shines with approval, encouraging the little ones to put sincere words into their messages. The young lady instructs her little pupils how to begin a message for the emperor, recommending that they greet him formally. The girl writes with a concentrated look, "Brother Helly, hello, it's me, Rosa." And the boy, enthusiastically following the example, adds only on his own piece of paper, "Hello, Brother Helly, it's me, Fer." The most important thing is to write from the heart so that they express gratitude in the letter or ask forgiveness from the emperor for something important. The main thing is to be sincere. The twins are a little confused and perplexed by what exactly "from the heart" means, thinking about the meaning of these words. The heroine explains that "from the heart" means to speak sincerely, without a drop of lies. The wards listen attentively to her words. Their looks are full of thoughtfulness and understanding. The meaning of this phrase gradually begins to reach them, and they seem to realize how important it is to be honest in their feelings and words. They are going to beautifully decorate the outside of the cards. To complete their creation, just a few more finishing touches, and then they can go to Helios Rose. And Fer are delighted with this idea. Their eyes are shining and their faces are lit up with joy. They enthusiastically get to work trying to make their cards even more vivid and memorable. Rose and Fer eagerly discuss their desire to show the cards to their older brother. They are overwhelmed with joy from the work done, and they dream of seeing his reaction as soon as possible, both hoping that he will appear as soon as possible to share their creative inspiration with him and see his smile. The secretary, looking worriedly at the exhausted emperor, suggests that he take a rest, hinting that he has taken on too many tasks working at night, while the man, deep down, regretting that he rarely sees the twins' dreams of spending more time with them because he only sees them at night when they are already asleep. Jean, who is also in the room, looks at the king in amazement, expressing his admiration for his diligence. He admits that he did not expect the emperor to be able to cope with such a huge stack of documents in 3 days. A slight fatigue is visible in his gaze. Adelio listens with restraint to the enthusiastic reviews of his work, his expression remaining serious, while one of the courtiers notes his exceptional abilities, emphasizing that not everyone could cope with such a volume of tasks. Another courtier enthusiastically adds that there is nothing that the great emperor could not accomplish. The courtiers discuss recent events. One of them sarcastically remarks that while he spent 3 days fiddling with papers with Heli, he had to entertain their highnesses. The second, sighing, replies that this is not as easy as it might seem. He notes that keeping an eye on a 7-year-old child is not an easy task at all, requiring special attention. The faces of the two men show hidden emotions. One of them says with displeasure that the children literally tormented him day after day. The eyes of the second are directed downwards, and he adds that he was so exhausted that he literally worked like a horse, apparently. Even strong adults sometimes cannot cope with the restless energy of children. The officer remembers how, breathing heavily, he pulled a cart with laughing twins sitting on it. The children constantly asked him to give them a ride, and he, unable to refuse, gave in to persuasion. After that period, the guy repeatedly cursed the one who invented this game, trying not to pay attention to his feelings. The emperor, with a slight smile, tells his interlocutor that the game with the cart was invented by Lady Sarah, and she personally gave Fer and Rose a ride more than once. Upon hearing this, Bronte is clearly surprised and exclaims with a note of bewilderment, not believing that the lady managed to move it at all. The weight is too great for her to try. In general, Jean is leading to the fact that he would like to take a day off since His Majesty will not be present in the castle anyway. He would like to get enough rest too. The days have become monotonous. There is not enough rest like air. The emperor, with a calm and slightly mocking smile, looks at the knight, who is clearly shocked, and emotionally exclaims, calling his smile a crime and demanding that he stop stupefying people. His answer was only in emotions. The man still blushes with rage and embarrassment, pointing at the emperor with reproach, and he perplexed calmly answers, asking what exactly is stupefying. The young man watches his acquaintance, who can't help but admit that every time Helios makes such a face, his heart trembles. He tries to convince himself that he must remain firm, but again falls into a trap. The advisor, looking at this with bewilderment, mentally distances himself, not knowing how to react to these emotions of his colleagues. Raphael turns to pick up the cloak with its fine gold embellishments and prepares to hand it to its owner. He respectfully announces that it is time to go to the younger ones and asks Raphael to hand him the cloak, his gestures precise and measured as if this is not just a request, but a ritual reflecting deep respect for the owner. Adelio, visibly agitated, barely holds back a smile. His face expresses mixed feelings. From anticipation to slight excitement, his words are spoken almost in a whisper but still attract the attention of his companions. The two, also surprised, are interested in what the emperor said, but he, instantly embarrassed, waves his hand, trying not to betray his feelings. The door opens quietly. The guy watches the children with a slight smile, surprised by their unusual passion. This is the first time that Rose and Fur are so deeply absorbed in something that they do not even notice his presence. He wonders what could have captured their attention so much, and feeling soft joy, simply enjoys the moment of their concentration. Not intending to wait any longer, the young man appeared behind the brunette, calmly asking what she was doing. His unexpected question caught the girl off guard, and she screamed in surprise. Embarrassed, she clearly did not expect to see him at that moment, and her confusion was obvious. The twins began to scream, jumping to the side. The emperor holds a little girl in his arms with a smile, and Fer clings to him. Holding his hand, Popo asks with excitement if he disturbed their lesson, but she quickly calms down when she hears that they have long finished and were just waiting for his arrival. The children got bored, and the girl decided to play with them to entertain them until her brother arrived. The main character happily tells Adelio that she and Sarah were eagerly awaiting his arrival. Her brother still does not let her go, listening to her words with slight thoughtfulness. Suddenly, her sister asks to come down to earth, which causes surprise. She had never mentioned this before, and this change seems unusual and strange to him. The girl with white hair leans towards the teacher and whispers in her ear, asking when they will give out the presents. The woman listens attentively, her face expressing slight thoughtfulness. After a moment, she winks and smiles, answering that if they want, they can do it right now. There is no need to delay. Inspired, Rose and Fur, looking at each other resolutely, approach the man they want to surprise but feel a little nervous, and excitedly exclaim. Doubting how to present their gifts, quickly turning around, they run out of the room. Obviously, the twins tried very hard. The heroine says that all this is a surprise for His Majesty. She couldn't tell him in advance. You can see how the young members of the royal family are impatiently waiting to meet the emperor. Their steps are slightly trembling from excitement and the desire to quickly surprise him with their special gift. In his hands are two drawings that make the young man blush. They depict flowers, and next to one of them there are even several swords. The children thought for a long time about how to express their true feelings, but nothing worked. In an instant, everything flew out of their heads. It's a pity that everything turned out this way. The kids trained long and hard, but everything ended completely differently than expected. The brunette decided that she would help a little. Their Highnesses prepared cards of gratitude for Adelio, which they are now holding in their hands. Leaning closer to the children, the teacher reminds them that they have already rehearsed the reading, have gone over the words a sufficient number of times, and there is nothing to doubt it will be easiest to read what is written. The words will come from the heart. The kids stutter a little, but they start reading. They are happy that the young man cares about them so much and gives them his boundless love when it's all over. The hero can't hold back. He laughs, and his emotions are intercepted by Popo, who starts smiling. Rose and Fear run up to their brother to start hugging. This moment is something you want to capture in your memory. Its peculiarity is different, creating a wonderful element. The king thanks the twins, gently kissing each on the cheek. The girl can't stop blushing. Her cheeks are literally burning because His Majesty only becomes more beautiful when he smiles. It became hard to breathe from how cute they are when the whole family is together. They have a special mood. It is transmitted to other people, forcing them to know a drop of joy in this gray life. After this, the blonde asks permission to read the contents of the cards himself. The kids nod but then start to worry. Rosalina hides behind her brother, but Ferriton acts a little differently. The baby hid behind Popo, for which there is no explanation, yet screams are heard from both sides. The emperor should not delay. The first in line was a postcard from her sister. The handwriting is a little jumpy. It is still not quite stable, but this does not prevent her from enjoying the pleasant words. The child apologizes for behaving worse before in the future. She will try to obey because she loves Heli very much. He gives her everything she needs and especially happiness. Now Ferritin comes forward, looking into his eyes, begging him to move on to his postcard. Too obviously in the little boy's mind, one of the swords on the cover belongs to him, and the other to His Majesty. The prince is worried about his brother because he works a lot, but hopes that very soon he will be able to rest more, and most importantly, visit them a little more often. Taking those items for himself, the young man turns to the governess. Thanks to Sarara, he received amazing gifts today from which one can only rejoice, freezing with cheeks red from embarrassment. The girl nods. It is she who should thank for the gifted position. The heroine seemed to be about to help get ready, but then one of the twins reminds that even Popo prepared a gift, taking out a ribbon with a flower. The girl carefully hands it to the king. She cannot stop being embarrassed, so she does not look in his direction, not to mention her eyes. Rosalina does not think that this is the right approach. Smiling with a drop of hope, the beauty asks to attach the gift directly to Helios's chest. The governess froze like a statue. She just wanted to hand it over, and in general it is considered that she has no right to touch such an important person. Looking up, the heroine almost immediately meets the eyes of the former prince. A beautiful smile is frozen on his lips. The lady has the right to attach the ribbon where she originally wanted. This was done together with the twins, and since they had already finished with congratulations, her turn came. Her hands are shaking. It's getting worse, but it would be unacceptable to miss the option of the situation's development. There was a feeling that her heart was about to jump out of her chest, but the heroine still touched His Majesty. She moves away, trying to stay on her legs, which are like pure cotton wool. There are cards with letters on the table reminiscent of elements of the game. The faces of the two show genuine interest in the process. They started using this not so long ago. The girl explains that they use these cards in the lessons of the imperial language, and that playing with them brings a lot of joy. Ferritin says that time flew by while they were playing a fascinating card game. He was having so much fun that the anticipation of his brother's arrival passed. Instantly, his sincere joy is reflected in his shining eyes and contented smile, and the cards scattered on the table emphasize the atmosphere of the carefree game. The young man looks at the letter card with curiosity and asks if the set includes the entire alphabet. The brunette explains that this format of learning is effective when learning any language. She is proud of her resourcefulness and notes that she copied the board games that she played with students in a past life, adding them to the lessons for fun and practice. Helios curiously asks what the game is all about and is told that they will show him everything now. The child takes a card with a symbol, preparing for an explanation. The maiden turns to the twins, asking them to show the king exactly how they play so that he can see the rules in practice. Rosalina proudly holds up the inscription collected on the cards, declaring that she has completed the task. Her face reflects all the internal emotions, and her shining eyes emphasize the success. Her brother is surprised, but happy for her. The teacher announces that the princess gave the correct answer. Energy and pride for the successful completion of the task reign in the room, captivating everyone present. The governess enthusiastically congratulates Rose, noting her success with the long word, and announcing the score, 1.0 in her favor. The little girl beams with joy, raising her hands in a victory gesture. Nearby, Ferritin looks slightly depressed but still supports his sister. Helios watches what is happening, restrainedly expressing approval. The twins beam with enthusiasm as they invite their brother Heli and Sarah to join in the game, their faces alight with joy, their eyes sparkling with genuine excitement. These kids are full of energy and are looking forward to everyone joining in on the fun. There is no idea how to behave further. Popo lowers her eyes, embarrassed by the offer to sit at the same table with the emperor. She feels that for a common person, this is unacceptable, but still decides. Although her gaze is full of doubts, the children, not noticing her doubts, look at her pleadingly, asking to stay and spend a little more time with them. The girl understands that it would be difficult to explain the difference in status between ordinary people and His Majesty. To the children, they would hardly be able to understand it, even if you try to convey the whole situation. Helios, smiling slightly, asks Rose and Farah if they want to play with Lady Popo, to which the children happily agree. On the palm of his hand is one of the cards which the hero holds out. The man smiles, noting that he would also like to play even more than his brother and sister. The game is divided into teams. Team Rose and Helly against Team Fur and Sir. The children are genuinely delighted, but the governess does not experience such enthusiasm. The children enthusiastically discuss the rules of the game. The twins must search for letters to form, given words which will be chosen by the elders in the return turn. The role of the leader passes to their majesty, and the children will already come up with a word to search for. Everyone is animated and ready to start, and the tiles with letters like stars scatter around, giving the game a magical atmosphere. Several dozen minutes of the game have passed. Beaming with happiness, the boy climbs forward and shows the words he has collected on the cards, and Popo supports him by clapping his hands with his victory. The hero brings a point to the team, which causes delight among the participants. The woman decides to make the tasks easier for the prince so that his team can win more often, given that his speech skills are developing more slowly than Rose's. The emperor announces that it is now his turn to guess a word. The twins, determined to show all their skills, prepare with full determination. The man smiles slyly and says, "Daisy." Popo is shocked. Such a difficult word, she realizes that only a princess can assemble it from letters, and is amazed by the choice. The main character says with a slight smile that he is having a lot of fun. The girl looks at him, not expecting such sincere joy. She does not understand at all how to react internally. The lady thinks that she did not think that he would really want to play with them, but seeing his genuine fun, her heart is filled with warmth and admiration because his emotions seem so sincere and simple. After a few minutes, Her Majesty raises her hand, indicating that she has completed the task. Her face is beaming with joy and satisfaction. Next to her is a board with cards with letters on it confirming the correctness of her answer. However, His Majesty, slightly downcast, lowered his head, hearing the consoling words that he did almost everything correctly. Despite the difficulty of the task, Rosalina successfully coped with the word, and now the score is equal. 1-1. The children are proud of their success. Although a little upset, he understands that everything is not as bad as it seems at first glance. It is the turn of the team of Prince Helios and Sarah. The children, inspired, encourage them, wishing them luck and confidence in victory. Their highnesses, hiding their smiles, lean towards each other, whispering about their plans, their eyes sparkling with mischief even more than before, while they discuss possible moves, thinking up cunning strategies. Suddenly, their older brother notices their whispers and asks curiously what they are talking about. The little ones, slightly embarrassed, answer with a smile that nothing special, just an innocent secret between them. The young blonde boy enthusiastically announces that he will be the first to say the word, calling on everyone to get ready, but the woman looks at him with doubt, assuming that it will be something simple like dirty. She even prepares to react harshly to any inappropriate choice. But at the moment when everyone is already prepared, the boy suddenly shouts the word kiss, which takes the heroine by surprise. The heroine smiles reservedly, holding the card in her hand. Her thoughts are distracted by an amusing observation. Children their age, seeing a young lady and gentleman next to each other, often decide that they can be in a romantic relationship. She finds this strange and slightly embarrassing, because now she and His Majesty have become the target of children's fantasies. The couple decides to continue participating, and here is the moment of choosing a card. The lady hesitantly reaches forward, but suddenly the king's hand is ahead of her. Both are a little embarrassed by the situation, and Popo notices that he touched the one place first. He offers her to take it, showing politeness, and the situation takes on a shade of awkward politeness, reflecting their tense feelings. The heroine literally jumps back. Lady Popo is stunned after accidentally touching the young man's hand. Embarrassment is visible on her face. She hurries to offer him to take the card for himself, justifying herself by saying that she will find another one. The king refuses with a slight smile, declaring that as a gentleman he prefers to give the card to her. The young prince, with a determined expression on his face, sternly asks his older brother why he is giving the card he found to the governess instead of using it himself. He is surprised that he did not snatch the card and put it on his board first. The people who were shamed, clearly embarrassed by the situation, look at each other not knowing how to respond to such an accusation. Fer is still furious. He does not change his feelings and expresses his displeasure by exclaiming that the game loses its meaning. If the adults continue to give in, he does not want to feel like a frivolous participant. His statement makes Sarah and the man with white hair flinch. Helios, embarrassed, rushes to apologize and promises to make an effort to avoid such behavior in the future. Fer looks down in disappointment. His eyes dim from lost interest. He sighs tiredly, saying that the game has lost its meaning and suggests ending it with slight regret and depression. Those around him agree, accepting his decision. Evening has come. The governess says goodbye to the king and the children standing at the entrance to the garden filled with morning light. She smiles, bowing slightly excitedly, promising to meet again. Adelio the younger, still a little offended, hides behind his brother and looks ahead with displeasure, reproaching the couple for ruining the game. The prince sighs quietly, looking sympathetically at the boy, understanding his disappointment and resentment. The noble character ponders thoughtfully why his gaze lingered so long on Lady Popo, feeling slightly embarrassed, his concentration causing conflicting feelings, but he tries to maintain restraint. Then when it all happens, the girl, slightly surprised and embarrassed, blushes, realizing that something special has arisen between them, which has gone unnoticed by the children. His mind is filled with the question of why, after their fleeting touch, he was so eager to give her the card. After all, they were rivals in the game, and the children were right. He decides that next time he will try not to give in to such impulses. His face reflects determination and thoughtfulness, while a child stands nearby watching him warily. Morning came, the day passed just like the night, and now a new lesson begins. The children are looking at something on paper. As it turns out, these are stickers in the form of stars. Rose jumps in surprise. They also shimmer in the sun. They are glossy on the front and the backside is sticky. If you pick up a corner and pull a little, you can take one. The lady is the first to demonstrate how to behave in order to get something beautiful. A star is stuck to the finger, all thanks to the fact that the back of the sticker is covered with glue. You can use something like that, but only for the purpose of making a postcard or something else. It is obvious that the kids are extremely interested. They ask to give them at least a few. Their wishes and dreams immediately crumble because the girl waves her finger in front of them, saying that they will only get one. When the heroes are so sad, they look like puppies whose favorite treat has been taken away. The girl sticks them on the cheeks of each of their highnesses. They start laughing, thanking for what was given to them unbelievably. But they really liked the stickers in Popo's past life. When the kids performed at school concerts, the lady also gave them similar things as decorations. Judging by the faces of the guys, they hope to get more stickers, but Sarah brought them for a reason. To get more, you will have to work first. The gift marks success. If their highnesses do something from this list, the heroine will immediately give out stars. This is praise for good behavior. At first, it is unclear what exactly is meant, but the girl carefully tries to explain. If the children answer all the questions she asks correctly, they will receive a gift. Or if they eat well, leaving nothing on their plate, or if they go to bed early and fall fast asleep after the first story. To make sure everything goes according to plan, the beauty has prepared a list of what you can get, in addition to stickers. For every 10 pieces, the twins will receive a special, tasty gift that will lift their spirits. The list continues up to 50, and for every 10, the rewards become better. The interest of young children cannot be held for long with stickers alone. They need to be given more motivation with such a reward system. Even older children happily rushed to complete each of the tasks in order to get as many opportunities to rest as possible. Handing over the paper, the heroine asks to read what is written. The first in line, of course, is Ferritin. The boy read the first point, albeit with difficulty. Rosalina comes next. The princess calmly looks through and then reads. There is nothing surprising in her ability. Girls at the age of 7 always learn the language much faster. This is their special privilege over boys. At this rate, there is only one last line left, which is for Adelio Jr. to complete. He reads quietly and immediately rejoices because he understands that for 50 stars, He and Sarah will go to the garden to play interesting games. They will take up all the time, and it will be as it should be. The brunette claps her hands. They are both great guys. The girl asks to pay attention that there are only 5 awards, although this is already noticeable so that the twins never forget the details. The lady is going to stick the list on the wall. This seems to be the most reliable way. A wild excitement lights up in Rose's eyes, which is impossible to hide. She needs to collect all the stars as quickly as possible to take the awards before her brother. His Majesty's head is spinning with almost exactly the same thoughts because his sister must not win. The kids don't get distracted by exchanging glances. They seem to be trying to destroy each other with a look that predicts something bad. Food is the easiest thing. If you eat everything to the last crumb, you will be able to play with Popo. And this is the most important thing. They want to hope that the situation will not be in the enemy's favor. Only 2 weeks passed. The heroine hands over a piece of paper completely covered with stars, and in the end Rosalina won, who obviously tried the hardest. In just such a short time, the girl managed to collect about 20 pieces, which seemed strange until it happened. The girl slept well, diligently, solved all the problems in class, and in general, everything went like clockwork for her. She did not refuse a single prepared dish, regardless of whether she liked it or not. Now the brunette thinks that she set the bar too high, because during this time the young man was able to collect only 3 stickers, which made him incredibly upset. The blonde jumps up and down, asking if they're going for a walk. That's what she was expecting for 20 gifts. The woman really thinks they can do it, but without finishing her sentence, she looks at the prince. Rosalina follows her mentor's eyes and also looks at her brother, who has turned away. The green-eyed girl runs up to the baby and grabs him by the cheek specifically so that he looks only at her. Ferritin must understand that what he imagines in his head will not be true. Sarara has never left him alone no matter what. Even if they did not manage to collect enough, the blonde will go with them for a walk. The young man had already thought that everything would turn out in his favor, but in the end, everything turned out completely differently than he wanted. In exchange for this, Rosalina would hold Popo's hand, and it would be desirable for this to be as long as possible. And during meals, and when they went to bed, the governess would sit on her side. The facial expression changed again. The hero began to fully realize what awaits him. If he does not sleep next to the girl, she will be almost invisible, and she will not be able to stroke his head because she simply will not reach. Turning around, the lady leaves, assuring that if the guy does not want, then he can refuse. But he runs after her and hugs her, begging for everything to be just like that. The blonde runs up to the governess to say that the young man will go with them. The princess has not only a beautiful appearance, but also a soul. The blue-eyed one praises her for such a good approach. After the conversation, they went to get ready. Jean and His Majesty are also strolling in the garden. They are discussing the next tasks for the week that need to be completed. Raphael in general really did make a good point. It is harmful to constantly sit in your office without going outside, so walking around the garden on a fine day is simply a wonderful idea, which was initially worthy. Bronte stopped in his tracks. He looked at something and then pointed forward with his hand. It seemed that Popo was there with the twins. All 3 were smiling as if nothing else existed around them. Helly looks and nods, realizing that this is true. What Jean sees, it looks like they are having an outdoor lesson. Sarah mentioned that the princess managed to collect a lot of points in the game she organized, for which she received a prize in the form of a walk in the garden. Adelio the younger tried, so now what she deserved feels even better. The girl has already told that she came up with a new system for training and rewarding. For every 10 pieces, there should be some kind of gift that would be liked. At first, the emperor was skeptical about her idea, but thanks to the stickers, the two really became more diligent. The lady understands the hearts of children much better. Jean can't contain his enthusiasm and smile. Sarara is just an incredible person. She is great, just like His Majesty, who brought the lady just 2 months ago. It would be great if the lady had a higher status. Her family went bankrupt and her parents died when she was only 15 years old, which is why her position in society is so-so. Bronte knows that if the girl had more chances, she would not have suffered with children but would have become a writer. This is, of course, true, but there is something else. The brunette is also very beautiful. She could have enviable suitors who would line up. It is impossible not to love someone like her, too bright and wonderful. The knight would like the governess to make her debut in high society. The king abruptly ordered her to be silent. He himself did not understand what he had done wrong, but the mood suddenly deteriorated. The guy grabs the shoulders of his interlocutor. Raphael had already warned him, but at first it was difficult to believe the words, but now everything fell into place. Since the young man works without rest day and night, his behavior can be attributed to traces of overwork. If His Majesty falls ill, he has the right to tell. The blonde moves away. Jean is not behaving quite appropriately because the king seems to be completely fine. He just waves off the words as best he can. There are still doubts in his head that will remain there for a long time, so Jean could have been interrupted since they attended the picnic of their highnesses. The young man heads forward to the clearing, and the knight apologizes and hurries after him. One cannot help but notice that he loves his little ones. Of course, the king is met by the twins who rush to hug him. The boy was walking in the garden and decided to come a little earlier. The kids gave it their all today during their studies. They collected a lot of stickers during the day. Thanks to you, they were able to go to the garden with the governess. Rosalina yells at her brother she did all the work and the boy himself collected only 3. The difference can be felt immediately as soon as they compare. A familiar voice can be heard from the side. A brunette in a red dress bows her head. It is an honor for her to greet the emperor. The twins immediately ran to hug the girl from the outside. It seemed like a spark was flying between them, but the kids quickly explained that everything was fine. To make it clear, the heroes hug now. Everything is fine with them. There was no quarrel, and of course this is true. His Highness does not understand when the children managed to get close to the teacher, as it turned out they had a lesson on how to properly greet, according to the rules of Adelio. The girl is the first to lift her dress and ask what business the king has come for, and Ferreton continues to speak, bowing his head. Rose and Fur both did a great job of getting the greeting right, running to accept the praise as a pat on the head. It's all because of Popo. In this case, Helios wants to thank the girl, who immediately blushed as soon as she heard the words. Rose stands between them and watches what is happening carefully, very suspiciously. They again have such faces that are meant for each other. The guy leans over. It seemed to him that the girl wanted to say something, but she brushes it off. Ferreton raises his hand. He has an idea that has been preserved. The baby is incredibly hungry. He wants to have a snack first. You need to return to the castle, and then you will have to decide according to the situation. The blonde doesn't want to go back. It would be nice to eat with his brother, and the teacher company is the most important thing now, so they will be together in the garden. If the king is a little late, Raphael will cause a real horror, but he can't refuse his brother and sister either. They will happily stay a little longer while there is such a chance. The girl nods and sits down. Rosalina gives them another look, realizing that today she will definitely find out what is going on between these two. The brunette lowered her eyes to the floor. She of course expected that His Majesty would drop by for lunch one day, but she couldn't imagine that they would seat him next to her. The awkwardness doesn't go away, but nevertheless the terrace is great. The glass ceilings attract attention, and there are no prying eyes. No servants, no one at all. The kid asks if Sarah liked the cake. For some reason she doesn't eat it, although it looks very tasty, waving it off. The girl explains that she's just not hungry. The blonde suggested that he could take the treat for himself, and she nods. Rose refused. She doesn't like it with melon. It's much better with strawberries. It's always been like that. The blonde passes his cake to his sister. Because he has to be honest, he asks Popo if he can bring something else. The woman shows that she is simply not hungry. His Majesty feels completely free here, but at the same time he is afraid to move even once. His presence is very oppressive. The baby quickly swallows all the leftovers and screams that he would like to have lunch together like this every day. The governess carefully asks him not to stuff his mouth so as not to choke. The situation reminds us of the old days when Ferreton ate sloppily, and his mother would always wipe his mouth and quietly scold him, and then gently stroke his head. What happened was not so long ago, shortly before the first snow began. Feelings make the guy smile he can't hold back. Rosalina quietly notices that her brother and Sarara are acting weird again, something that happens every time they are around each other. The emperor assures that everything is fine, but then the governess chokes on water and begins to cough, while others ask if they need to call a doctor. Her face is still a little red, but the woman assures that it is nothing, she just choked. The princess is just worried it can be discussed. The brunette nods. She is sure, even without her, that she has become a little older. The beauty has come to her senses. Their highnesses have been especially diligent lately. Now the younger ones not only ask to read them a book, but they also read it themselves, all because they diligently study the imperial language. Recently, Rosa and Ferritin announced that they would sleep in their own rooms on their own, and then in the morning they boasted that they fell asleep peacefully without any support. The children are growing up little by little. All this is good. But there is a feeling that His Majesty deliberately changed the subject of the conversation because there was some awkwardness hanging over it. But they manage to talk calmly. The blonde jumps up and asks his brother to give them rewards for behaving well. Not only Sarara should do this. Blue Eyes said that for every 10 stickers they collected, they would get something good, so it would be nice to get something from the boy. The prince was thoughtful when asked what he would like. In fact, it would be nice to have a party thrown in honor of his birthday. Rosalina also immediately perked up. She would put on the most beautiful dress and also beautiful shoes. June would soon be here. They would have the moment that all children were waiting for. The emperor cannot promise that it will be feasible in the same way as last year his brother understands, but this day wanted to be spent together just as a family. In addition to his closest relatives, the young man would like to invite his friends, and for everyone to congratulate him. The king thought for a second, not understanding whether he should agree putting off the rest. The young man finally gives in. It would be better to arrange a tea party for their birthday, to which all friends and closest relatives could be invited. The imperial palace cannot be kept closed any longer. It is time to start holding celebrations again. The children will be happy about it. What is planned will amuse them and help them make friends. Now the blonde turns to Popo. If she doesn't mind, she can take part. Only a small circle of people will be invited. They will arrange everything during the day or in the evening. It hasn't been decided yet. The boys immediately start to rejoice. Sarara must definitely be present. Both want the governess to be next to them. It will be special. The brunette thought, this would not be a social event. She could probably be there even with a low status as a nanny. The lady would not be at all against it. The blonde thought that the girl had misunderstood him and wanted to explain, but the children took the beauty away. It was time to have fun to the fullest. The maids began to spread rumors. During her shift, one of them heard that there would be a celebration in June. Some kind of garden party was planned in the palace. The girls surrounded the heroine to ask questions about the organization. They want to prepare interesting games, but they don't know which ones, and also to make a menu. This is important. There are several sheets of paper in their hands. They have already made sketches of outfits for their highnesses, which look good. It is only unclear whether it is worth replacing the fabrics with denser ones. The woman is pretty tired of everything that is happening. She is just an ordinary governess. She does not know how to organize parties because she has no experience in this. The first to be assembled was the princess, who, by the way, was sitting quite quietly. She smiles, showing off her wonderful dress. Sarara freezes. She has no words to describe the beauty. The baby jumps up and down, but they make her stop. If this continues, her beautifully styled hair will lose its meaning because it will become very disheveled in an instant. Popo sits down and explains that it is better to take care of your hair. Today is a special day. You need to go out to the guests in all your splendor. His Majesty most likely can't wait to see the image. The girl nods with a smile. She can't wait to show herself to her brother, and she also really likes the shoes that Sarara herself gave her. The brunette nods. She decided to give Rosalina elegant shoes. It took a lot of time and money to find a decent shoemaker, but the smile was definitely worth it. Ferritin comes forward, pushes his sister away, and tries to show himself to Popo. The little girl, of course, starts screaming, but they are separated before a fight starts. The princess recovers faster. She remembers about her hair and is not going to change anything. Twins are beautiful in both soul and body. They are always different from others. Adjusting his suit, the young man hopes that this is how he looks like his brother Heli. There is no doubt that he is exactly the same as the king and even makes the same facial expression. Sarah laughs and embraces the children. They are happy that the girl agreed to be at the party. Their birthday should go perfectly. The woman takes a gift for Ferritin out of her pocket too. It is a small model of a carriage. The boy is already pleased with what he saw, but the toy will make him experience more feelings. Pointing her finger at the button, the beauty asks to press it. Something suddenly flies out from there. A transforming toy is the best option that could have been thought up. The blonde jumps up and down with joy again. His eyes can't help but shine, they are distracted. Jean has come for their highnesses. It's time to go to the garden. Looking at the children, the brunette cannot help but say that the twins will attract a lot of attention. They are so beautiful that it is impossible to look away. There will be many, many peers today. I hope that they will all have a good time together. Helios is also outside. There is no need to keep him waiting. Sarah sinks onto the bed as soon as the door closes. Organizing the party has taken all her strength. She is squeezed like a lemon. She just wants to lie down or sleep. A maid entered the room, causing the lady to jump. She promised that she would now go to the garden. It turned out that the woman had come to deliver a gift from the king. In her hands is a beautiful dress. It is different from what is now on the brunette's body. His Majesty gives the item of clothing from the bottom of his heart. He also chose it himself. At today's celebration, Popo will not be a governess but a guest. The woman freezes. She cannot do this when there are only aristocrats around. Standing next to the others will mean a lot. The maid tries to calm Sarara down. She shouldn't speak, but the twins and their brother have prepared something special. It is incomprehensible to Popo, but she simply must be present guest or not. But if she wore a dress, the emperor's family would be incredibly happy. The brunette agreed. She understands that she needs to get out of her comfort zone. After half an hour they finished, it was time to look in the mirror. The woman couldn't help but admire. They said it would be a modest tea party, but in the end there were a lot of people around that the lady had never seen. Getting to their highnesses will be difficult. They are at the main table surrounded by acquaintances. For now, we will have to abandon this idea. A familiar voice is heard from behind. Raphael greets the beauty. They haven't seen each other for a long time. The woman worked hard to organize the party. Her efforts were not ignored. Turning his attention to the garden, the man asks if the woman knows anyone present. Of course, she knows some of them. She teaches many children, and their parents are always kind. The face distorts when the gaze meets Bennett. The Duke is talking to the king. The heroine did not think that she would even meet him. Raphael asks what relation Sarara has to the man. Many people don't like him, but since he is a duke and has ores in his possession, it is customary to ignore his presence. In that case, the brunette made a big mistake. The acquaintance raises an eyebrow. It is hard to believe that she managed to quarrel with the aristocrat when she was teaching his offspring. It's not about teaching. Bennett was trying to take possession of the young governess's body, and the conversation is distracted by a scream coming from the other end of the garden. The little ones want the chocolate that spills out of the fountain. The maid can't keep up. There are too many children around who make them nervous. Apologizing to the advisor, the beauty went to the guys to help the twins notice the woman and began to talk about her beauty. They are happy that the dress was used. Everyone else runs to Sarara. They love the teacher and haven't seen her for a long time. Even the Marquis's son is nearby. They haven't seen each other for several weeks. Stepping back, the brunette bows his head and greets his acquaintance correctly. He could not forget about the rules. The girl is pleased that he still remembers all the details of the training. Their highnesses watched for a long time, but it was obvious that they were tired. They ran forward, assuring that Sarara was only theirs. They would not behave politely because such is reality. The kids have a birthday today. They would like to be close. As it was originally intended, they are used to holding hands, and now there will be no exception. The heroine has only 2 hands, so she can only be around 2 of the most obedient children. All 3 immediately ran away to sit at the table and behave appropriately. The woman was distracted. Several aristocrats approached her, who smiling greeted the governess. The Marchioness noticed that Edward was upset that Sarah did not come to them, at least not as often as before. One of the girls notes that her daughter was also upset and was looking forward to her birthday to see her favorite teacher again. She couldn't refuse such a thing. Rumors began to spread that the lady was able to easily win the hearts of the twins. Thanks to them, they can even see with their own eyes the beauty of His Majesty who organized this event. Many young beauties have come, all of them wanting to capture the king's attention and become the new empress. In the entire state, there is no one who would not fall in love with Helios. The man will soon have to decide on a bride and get married. His Majesty is already 27. It will not be possible to postpone all these moments, even if you want to. The girls are discussing who will become queen. It is interesting to find out the young Duchess Sylvia Clocks will probably take the place. She is the most suitable candidate. Oddly enough, the lady has a slightly higher chance than everyone else. She has a high status and also has quite strong magic. This is quite enough for now. What is especially important is that Sylvia has been the man's friend since early childhood. They know each other well. Perhaps he is even in love with her. It's quite difficult to say. The man turned and accidentally met Popo's gaze, immediately starting to smile. She realized that he treated all girls the same. This is normal, but for some reason Sarara feels strange. Feelings are the most important thing now because you can hear the screams of the princess who has thrown the brunette to the ground and is waving her arms, asking him to repeat what he said not long ago. The Marquise shouts that it would be better to let him go because his head is starting to hurt more. The blonde won't leave him alone. He needs to be sure that she will definitely continue. Sarara freezes in horror when she sees this picture. The princess is furious and does not intend to change in any way. It is obvious that there must be a reason that is not revealed yet. Popo hears people in the crowd condemning the beauty she is a girl and should not have behaved like that first. The lady looks around to find the prince. He should surely be nearby. Everything happened too quickly. The boy was found. He was sitting on the grass and sobbing, unable to hold back his tears. The brunette decided that she needed to go to him first, so she quietly called him by name. His Highness quickly hurries to Sarara. He asks to be hugged, but for now time is a little delayed. It is necessary to deal with Rosalina, who has already grabbed the enemy's sleeve with her teeth. The voice is rough, but at the same time calm. While the governess asks to stop letting go of Bennett's offspring, the lady stands up, leaving the same angry look which is directed specifically at him. Although the blonde can be capricious, she is a pretty kind child and would not just get into a fight. The woman holds out her hands and asks him to come to her. They need to talk. The little girl almost immediately runs into the arms and tries not to cry. Her eyes are a little swollen. The teacher understands that asking for details when there are so many eyes around is a pointless exercise. It is better to take their highnesses aside. Turning to the Marquise, the girl asks her to take care of young Eliza while they sort everything out. Surely in just a few minutes, the full story of events will become known. The boys stand next to each other with their heads down. Sarara points towards the gazebo, which is a little further in the garden. Even if they don't want to, they still have to talk. There are still tears in my eyes when they ask questions. There is silence. The babies are shaking so much that it is clear that the situation was out of the ordinary. The twins are good children, Popo is sure. They couldn't attack Eliza without a reason. It's better to tell the whole story. The kids can't hold back and both start crying. The boy took and said something obscene, but it's unclear what since the words are mixed up. It's good that the girl decided to take some caramels with her, which she immediately handed to the boys. They sadly hung their heads but continued to chew the treats. The Duke revealed that Helios was going to abandon his brother and sister, and after the birth of his own children he would forget about the one he had previously courted and spent time with. Freezing in horror, the brunette does not understand how the young man dared to say such a thing. It is unlikely that a 7-year-old child could have come up with something like that. Only Duke Basman could have said that because children only repeat after their parents. Without trying to stop crying, Rosalina quietly asks if it is true that their brother will leave them. She wants to believe in the best, but for some reason, everything is not so rosy. Those lines were convincing. Falling to her knees, Sarah hugs Ferritin. The boy also. Sobs, asking if his brother hates them. In the future, his opinion may change. They have no one but Heli to lose, and it is incredibly scary. The governess herself also wants to give in to her feelings. There are too many questions inside that will remain. She assures that this will never happen. They will be safe. It seems like there was sadness inside, but even this quickly gives way to some kind of anger. They say the apple doesn't fall far from the tree in the case of Besman. This is exactly the case. There is no denying it. The maid interrupted the conversation the guys had to go back to the party. So as not to miss anything that would be undesirable, they wouldn't let go of the skirt. They didn't want to be near Eliza. Looking into Rose's eyes, the girl explains that as soon as she sees the gentleman, she should ask for forgiveness. Despite the statements, the princess must remain a true lady who has dignity. If their highnesses did not react to the words spoken earlier, it would be the worst punishment for him. As long as the emperor was in the hall, he would not dare to say anything more. Before the brother comes to his senses, we need to go. The woman is going to go to the castle to rest a little, so a little later she will catch up with the maid and the children. They will meet again in the garden. Sarara is about to leave when she hears a rustling sound. She turns around, meeting the eyes of the person she most didn't want to see. He quietly says her name. The blonde sighs. He doesn't show it, but he is incredibly drawn to communicating with the ladies. Sylvia is constantly hanging around, unable to stop chatting. Clocks smiles. He and His Highness haven't seen each other for quite some time. This is already a fact that can't be removed. Too many eyes are watching them. The young man asks to be more respectful. Raphael runs up to the man to tell him something. As it turns out, something happened to the princess, and the prince, the duke's son, also took part in the fight which happened there in front of everyone. Fortunately, the baby is fine. He was immediately taken away by the Duchess of Bennett and should have already been put in order. Calm down a little. Now the question is about Rose and Fur. They were taken away by the governess. Turning to Clocks, the young man immediately apologizes to her. It would be better to continue their conversation later. It seems that the younger ones had some kind of trouble. There is no point in postponing. The conversation is postponed indefinitely. The Duke steps forward, holding a half-empty bottle of alcohol in his hands. Earlier, the girl dared to be rude to him, and this time she decided to harm her son too. He hints at what happened in the garden. It looks like the brunette got drunk. Now he is angry that the woman does not answer him but remains silent, turning away as if he does not hear anything. The man is drunk. If he continues, the lady will call someone for help. An understanding occurred in her head. If you think about it, the beauty has no idea how to use magic. A circle appears in her hands which branches out forward. The blonde goes into the garden. He understands that everything that happened ended badly, but while it is unknown what happened, it is necessary to sort out the details and then say something. The brunette runs forward. The younger brother was attacked by Her Highness. I hope that the young man plans not to leave everything as it is. Clocks realized that this man found a reason to draw attention to himself. The woman is almost crying, begging for her little brother's wounds to be taken care of. The twins are running forward, and behind them, the voice of the maid is heard, who was unable to hold them back. Rose was wrong when she bit Eliza and pulled out a clump of his hair. She sincerely apologizes, although she does not believe that she started it all on her own. The boy was also to blame. Basman stated that Helios may decide to kill his brother and sister when he has his own child, but at first he will give him all his attention as is proper. The kids did this because of a direct insult to the imperial family. The young man's sister was dejected. She assures that they treat the king with all due respect. Lowering his voice, the man calmly says that this time he will turn a blind eye to everything since his sister was to blame. But next time the family will not get away with this. They need to think before they speak. Basman makes the lady fall to the ground. The magic worked perfectly. He reaches out and grabs her right by the wrist, showing everything completely, and of course does not listen to the request to let go. The Duke himself is quite a generous man. Accept the offer. Lady, none of this would have happened. She would have been fine. We are talking about those unfortunate 120 gold for the lessons. The brunette suggests not to teach his son, but in that case the girl can visit him at least once a week. She did not appreciate the offer and stepped on his foot. In that case, the hero takes a swing. There is silence in the garden because the two have moved away. The king orders to find out where the Duke is. He needs to be talked to. The guys come up from behind to ask if the brother is angry and if it is really because of them. As it turned out, the emperor was more angry with himself for the fact that he too rarely told them how much he loved them. He needed to remind them that they would always be important to him. Sarah's words were true. The twins really were worried in vain because Heli would never leave them. Now it became clear what was really in it and what was the meaning. The young man leans over and hugs the family tightly. He is happy that everything ended more or less well and that they understood what was what, because that is the most important thing. Now he asks where Lady Popo is. The maidens seem to be with them. It turned out that Sarah had decided to stay in the garden near the palace. She said that she would return later because she needed to change her clothes and fix her hair. Apparently, she still hadn't shown up. Raphael appeared out of nowhere. He found out where Basman was. He was seen drunk near the castle. The servants wanted to follow him, but he drove them away, wanting to be completely alone. His Majesty realized what was happening there. Quickly jumping up, he runs away and on the way throws out a request to look after his brother and sister. He urgently needs to get to the garden. The blue-eyed girl closed her eyes, realizing that they were going to hit her, but she felt nothing. The king stopped the hand which made the Duke embarrassed and stepped back. Looking at Popo, the young man froze. She was a little disheveled. Tears and fear were frozen in her eyes. Besman easily changed the subject, asking what Helios needed. Wanting to know what happened looking away so as not to be caught, the aristocrat explains that the lady stepped right on his foot, apparently forgetting who was in front of her. A little earlier, the son committed an unforgivable act against the imperial family. Now it is clear from whom he takes an example, the Duke is obliged to teach the boy and himself too. I want to be angry because it all happened, because of a recent conversation Basman said that even though the kids have status now, it won't last long in the future. They will definitely end up overboard as soon as Adelio has his own children. It can be said that the twins are in an unstable situation, although they themselves do not know it. Elise stands firmly on her feet because she has such a powerful father who will protect him in any case. The man realized that the brat had passed on the words to the kids, and now they would have problems. Falling to his knees, the Duke apologized. He had not looked after the child and was now reaping the consequences. You need to ask forgiveness not from the king but from the prince. And Princess nodding, the Duke agrees to absolutely everything, because he understands how it is all connected. Of course he will apologize even to them. It turned out that this small list even includes Lady Popo. The aristocrat attacked her, not allowing her to leave and causing her to be scared now the girl is injured. Basman objects for the first time. He did nothing like that with the lady, so he does not see the reason for such a conversation. He is faced with Adelio's gaze, from which the blood in his veins runs cold. Smiling, the young man asks for forgiveness. He quickly changed his mind to stay in order. The brunette is the same age as his daughter, so by mistake he decided to correct the mistake she made. After these words, the man is finally allowed to rise, although next time he should be more careful. What happened today should not be repeated for his own well-being. The king led the lady into a room in the palace. She sat down and assured him that she was completely fine. Gratitude burst out on its own. It was scary to imagine how everything would have ended if not for the young man. Popo, despite her words, looks extremely scared. It's a pity that she is not a younger sister. If things were different, the young man could simply hug her and gently wipe away her tears, allowing her to calm down. The man raises his voice, asking, "Why lie? It is clear that everything is bad. There is no need to try to turn the truth around." The heroine protests again, but the tears in her eyes, which begin to flow down her cheeks, speak much better. True, in fact, everything is not normal at all. The girl is incredibly scared. If His Majesty had not come on time, it is not clear how this would have ended. The Duke behaved aggressively. Starting to laugh lightly, the maiden says it like it is. She was afraid to imagine what would happen when she saw Besman in front of her. She should be more careful, but she did not even suspect that danger was nearby. Squatting down, the young man asks about the pain in his arm. There is something red there, similar to a scratch. The lady herself did not notice, but with the help of magic it was cured quite quickly. The woman's heart did a somersault. She doesn't understand what just happened. She shouldn't feel something so strange. She can't believe that Popo has tender feelings for Helios. Just recently, the blonde even got angry at an aristocrat who wanted to do something indecent with a lady. If you look at the situation as a whole, he is too polite with an ordinary governess. I would like to think that there is a chance the feelings are not one-sided. Realizing that thoughts are focused on this, the heroine brushes it off. He is equally kind to all girls. It seems that Sarah herself is carried away by this. In front of her is the ruler of the empire. It is clear that such a person cannot be ignored, but looking at him in the light of love is a big mistake. It will not end well. The woman must not reveal her feelings. She promises herself that this will never happen. The procedure is over. All that remains is to thank the blonde. Cannot help but think that the teacher still looks worried. There is a knock at the door, and then Rosa's voice is heard asking to come in. The twins run inside as soon as they realize that Popo is there. They immediately want to hug, asking what happened. Heli did not offend the beauty. She smiles easily. Then it turns out that the maiden is ill, so the young man borrowed his clothes. Ferritin interrupts his sister, asking that everything be fine. The twins look at each other for a moment, suggesting to do the same as their brother. They reach up and simultaneously kiss Sarah on the cheeks. The young man just uses divine power when they are sick, and then kisses, saying that all the pain will disappear. I wouldn't want the girl to feel bad, so of course they wouldn't mind if all the pain went away. It's kind of awkward to fall into such childishness at 23, but for the sake of the prince and princess, it's normal. The girl doesn't believe that His Majesty actually says something like that when the guys are sick. Turning around, the lady sees how the blonde guy walks away, blushing scarlet. The next morning, the council began to discuss the fact that Besman's son had done something wrong by causing harm and insult to the twins. He had said something that he should have kept silent about. The king straightens his robe and turns to the duke. They need to discuss the matter concerning his mines, but today the man is unusually silent, which does not allow him to do what he had planned. It is hard to believe that a person is ready to put up with the original that they already have. Lowering his head, the brunette says that everything he had was received only thanks to the mercy of the emperor. He has no right to object. The reception ended. Raphael came closer to say that the blonde was not himself today. The words hinted that there was no reason for Besman to raise taxes from the outside. It seemed that the young man was trying to drive the guy into a corner using his questions. The young man lost his temper, got a little angry, but he doesn't regret it. It was completely justified. The aristocrat must have allowed himself to speak in such a manner at home, and his children overheard it by accident. The question about Sarah is confusing His Majesty. Hopes that she is well. The meal with the twins is approaching. It is imperative to find time for everyone to dine together. Spending more time with the children would do the king good, and it would also be a great opportunity to check in on Miss Popo. She was probably not talking because she was busy, and this way they would be alone together for at least a minute. Before going for a walk with the boys, Sarara asks the maid what their schedule is. As it turns out, the king plans to have lunch with his brother and sister. He just happens to have some free time. After hearing this, the beauty froze. She understands that she must give up her feelings for the guy, but if they continue to clash often, it will be quite difficult to do this. The maid noticed how the expression on his face changed. It is clear that sharing a meal with someone of high rank is never easy. Dinner began. The girl was busy helping the guys sit down at the table and adjusting the napkin on their necks. Behind them, footsteps were heard, and a voice announced that the king had arrived for the meal. The boys immediately jumped up, almost tripping over a chair. The man greeted everyone in the room, hoping that everything went well and that they really were waiting for him. The governess reports that they spent a wonderful day together, which ended just recently. Only dinner was left. And that's it. The maid wanted to put a plate on it, but the woman said that she wouldn't need a portion. The girl assures that she is not hungry, and in fact she managed to eat a little in advance. The brunette thought everything through. If she starts eating now, most likely she will feel sick. Being immersed in her work, the woman of course did not have time to grab even a crumb. Now it affects her. Her stomach wants to curl into a tight knot, and the pain spreads throughout her body. The blonde turns to the mist, distracting her from contemplating the dinner on Ferritin's plate. He allows the girl to leave if she needs rest. The guy is able to look after the children on his own. The boy sitting next to her grabbed the governess's hand. The brother said that dinner was an important time that needed to be shared with dear people. Sarah should stay. Perhaps the young man didn't think about it, but Sarara needs to rest, at least sometimes. The girl was probably exhausted when she looked after the boys. The prince likes being with the girl. He wants them to spend more time, especially at dinners. It seems that Sarah is a little uncomfortable being around His Majesty. Rose couldn't help but notice it. It's obvious. While the blonde was thinking, both the king and the governess were distracted by her and simultaneously said that there were vegetables. My brother is the most handsome even when he frowns. I can't believe that the girl doesn't care even about this. She's not interested. The woman continues to talk about the same thing. She understands that the beauty cannot refuse food. The first thing that is done is to list the carrot dishes that can be served for lunch. The blonde smiles in front of him. Popo behaves awkwardly, but in front of the guys she has a completely different image. Turning away, the young man assures himself that now is not the time or place to think about the beauty. Her Highness still has no intention of eating, but she doesn't want to eat carrot soup tomorrow. The baby puts some soup in her mouth. Nothing happened to her. She is completely fine. The maids take the children. It's time for them to bathe. They won't even resist. Again, two people are sitting close to each other and there is no one nearby. The girl is trying to say something. They both still haven't had dinner, so in that case, they might as well eat together. Their stomachs are starting to rumble. The subject changed, and the lady remarked that it was a great miracle that she had the right to enter the castle at all. Although Popo is from a noble family, she is very poor, and if a man is seen next to her, it will cast a shadow. Sarah always carries herself impeccably. Knowing the etiquette perfectly well, she certainly has nothing to worry about. It seems like the young man has put the lady in a difficult position. The girl is waving her hands. On the contrary, she is immensely grateful to be nearby. There was no time to speak further. The door opened and the guys who had managed to swim appeared. Rosalina is put to bed first, but Fair is stuck to Sarah, wanting to stay with her longer. His Highness's whims are now to their advantage. As long as the girl is next to him, they will not have to be left alone with the king. The heroine will stay longer and put the baby to bed. This is part of her duties. The young man asks to read a book, and the man noticeably wilts. He doesn't want to sit until the morning. Rosalina seems to have misunderstood everything. The little girl thought that the twins had a fight, and if they read together, it would be a great chance to make up. Whenever she and Fair had arguments, Sarah always made peace between them, but it was time to take a different approach. The blonde man asks to choose a book, but the girl wants something completely different. He hasn't yet collected the scattered editions. It all ended with the lady calling her brother by his full name, and he even froze with his eyes wide and full of fear. Leaning towards his ear, she explains that the teacher and the king are acting strangely and the girl is going to fix everything. The kids ran to choose a book with unusual content. Of course, this took more time. Helios's beauty is dangerous to Sarara's heart. She mumbles something, trying not to stutter. A few minutes later, the boys ran up with one of the books. It turned out to be Sleeping Beauty. The brunette doesn't understand. Usually twins don't like fairy tales about princesses today. Everything is different. Sarah will play the role of a beauty and their brother will be a wizard. Of course, they were surprised but kept silent. This tale tells of a magician who awakened a beautiful princess from her eternal sleep by kissing her and thus breaking the spell. The girl will not put it off any longer. It is time for the children to go to bed, and she will start reading. The children's eyes light up as soon as they hear the beginning of the story. The king delivers his line with intonation. The end was near. Leaving behind the defeated dragon, the magician entered the thorn-covered garden. No matter how the hero called the lady and woke her up, nothing happened. There was no effect. Words of love were the only thing that could help. After that, they had to kiss. Fair can't resist asking if they will do the same. Obviously, he is serious. They do nothing. Rosalina is terrified. Apparently they had such a big fight that even this doesn't help. The king pulls himself together and begins to read the last line, stumbling a little on the last word. The woman finishes her story but is interrupted by the princess because important details were missed in the process. Before this, Sarara willingly played any role, be it a magician or a mother or even a dragon. Now she is different. A fairy tale cannot be complete if it is left unsaid, and the kiss in this story is the most important thing, literally. Shouts and requests come from all sides, but the girl refuses. Only close people do this. Fair now also understands that there is something wrong between his brother and Sarah, or that they didn't like each other in the first place. The blonde wants to cry. They don't like each other. Of course, it's obvious that they had a fight, but it seemed untrue. A few seconds later, the twins are crying, while the heroes do not understand when they managed to quarrel. Trying to calm the children, the governess cannot explain why she feels awkward around the king. Brother is also good. He constantly asks the children to get along with each other, but he himself behaves incorrectly. Looking at the lady, the blonde asks to play the roles of the magician and the princess again. This is a forced measure. Blushing a little, she nods. Nothing can be done if this is His Majesty's request. There is no need to refuse. Looking straight into the eyes of his interlocutor, the man humbly asks her to kiss him. Smiling, the woman opens the book, commenting that the couple kissed and lived happily ever after. It's good that Helios figured out how to get out of this, and after that he acts as if nothing happened. It is not surprising that he managed to behave like this. Usually the young man accompanies many ladies to receptions. The little ones jump up and down, asking to have another book read to them. Refusal immediately makes them wilt. Half an hour later, the twins fell asleep. They mumbled something but could not pronounce it correctly. Too late to go home, the king offers to escort the girl back. If Adelio doesn't do this, Rosa and Fer will find out and then be offended, thinking that the couple is in a quarrel again. Jean is walking behind, accompanying her. The girl still does not understand why the king is so impulsive. In her head, the heroine asks herself not to build up hopes. It's all only because of the twins, that's the reason. Because of the words of their highnesses, we had to stay. The girl will tell them not to create so many worries. The man smiles. He just wanted to stay around longer. For such words, the lady will forgive him. The young man is polite and says what the interlocutor is ready to hear. The prince and princess will get angry if he does not see him off. This was the reason initially. Deciding to laugh to diffuse the situation, the guy assumes that all three of them decided so. When the emperor personally escorts the girl, it is strange something like this should usually be done by a sir knight. Even today, the man had to think of something else to calm the kids down instead of grabbing and kissing the lady's hand. He can't believe he still thinks about it. The blonde apologizes for putting Sarara in an awkward and confusing position while reading the book. The heroine waves it off. The children were crying, and considering that it was the easiest way, she has nothing against it. Everything is fine. It's time to go back home. Popo carefully climbs into the carriage. Jean helps her. The blonde watches what is happening carefully. He frowns, making it clear that something seems wrong. Changing, the man smiles, wishing the trip to go. Well, Bronte asks, "What's wrong? Things have been strange lately." The next morning at the meeting, questions began to be asked about how much longer the Empress's place would remain empty. It was time to think about an heir. If a young man is not ready to get married, he should start with a normal relationship. Then everything will be fine. It is impossible to read the man's emotions. He is rather angry, suggesting to discuss the issue of marriage later. After the council, the king went about his business. Raphael notes that he is tired and there is no need to deny it. It is clear that the ministers are right. There are so many candidates, they will have to look through each application form. The first one that came across was the Duchess. There was no one better suited for the role of Empress. It was she. Choosing clocks will give the Empire a lot of good chances to become invincible. It will not be possible to keep the place empty any longer. It is part of the king's duties to provide the state with an Empress. Raphael sees no one else for this role except Duchess Clocks. She is not indifferent to the king, and her appearance is stunning. The best thing about marriage is the ability to use the mages who serve Sylvia's family to strengthen her powers. Since ancient times, the family monopolized many areas of magical knowledge. This was never an exaggeration. The entire magical power of the Empire depends on them. The marriage will be profitable, but even in his thoughts, the young man cannot imagine himself next to Sylvia. Looking at his watch, the brunette suggests going to meet the Duchess. The redhead smiles when she sees Helios. She really does have an outstanding appearance. The rumors are not lying. The Virgin is glad that her request was answered. It is an honor for her to fully enjoy the beautiful garden. The man is in a bad mood today, obviously, because of the proposal. He doesn't think it's right to agree to marriage like that. Clocks apologizes for the inconvenience her message has caused. She is ready to act in the interests of the state. The beauty's family will be an excellent support thanks to their magic. It will be possible to significantly strengthen the emperor's power. The duchy does offer a lot, but even so, one cannot marry someone without love. Marriage for love was only between previous rulers. This is an exception to the rule. The woman was refused, but it's better not to be upset. Maybe Adelio is being stubborn now, but he won't be able to refuse any longer. Before leaving, the young man says goodbye. He needs to go about his business. The lady hopes for a more positive answer at the next meeting. The girl looks around. Soon, she too will live in the castle. She notices how the young man smiles when he meets his brother and sister. Next to them is the governess. At first, Sylvia didn't pay attention, but then she heard the name of that person. The brunette says that the children begged her to accompany them. There was no hope of seeing each other in the garden so soon. Addressing someone in her head, the redhead understands that achieving the goal will not be so easy. It was good that the family did not pass each other on the way. The young man was just about to go to the children's estate to play with the kids. Picking up Fer, the brother smiles as the child cries out to be taken back to Serra. It's evening, the end of the working day. The girl barely realizes that she is leaving a little earlier than usual. It is not surprising that the children quickly fell asleep without causing any problems because they were tired after a long walk. His Majesty looks worried something must have happened. His companion is not the first to notice this. Carrying the burden of being a king must be hard, but it's certainly no harder than raising a bunch of brats. This is already in the past. Now the guys are exemplary students, so everything is fine. On the contrary, it's a joy to be around. If only the hero had not tried to hide the truth, and it is obvious that his heart is clearly heavy, something very strange has happened. Perhaps it's because of her meeting with clocks that the girl is a little jealous of the one who can make the king's heart beat. Before heading home, the lady is offered a walk in the garden. The moment seems a little awkward. The blonde didn't believe that Sarara had agreed. After all, it would take away her opportunity to go home early. Jean listens to the conversation. Walking in such heat is not a very pleasant thing lately. He is not left alone with the beauty. She is almost always with His Majesty. The young man can't help but apologize for being such a terrible employer, but he is asked not to say that it's not true. The conversation turned to compensation. The lady sounds like she wants a raise or something. If the heroine takes this opportunity to ask for a raise, she will be paid more. It turned out that His Majesty was just joking. He always does something like this when he wants to. In fact, the man suggested going for a walk only to see his friend smile. The girl often uses one technique when working with children. When they are in a bad mood, she resorts to a little trick. I had some caramels in my hand. Usually, sweet things make me feel better. This is the only working method so far. It seems that the young man understands the feelings of his brother and sister. They are drawn to the girl with all their hearts because it is impossible to tear themselves away from Popo. There is a smile on her face, but her cheeks are red because the most beautiful man is speaking. She cannot utter a word. One of the caramels turned out to be melted. The girl was carrying them with her, and due to the heat, the candies became inedible. Even though the candy has melted a little, the taste hasn't changed at all, and the hero eats them all, throwing them into his mouth. There is one last thing left. If the lady wants, she can eat it, but her hands will get dirty too. The beauty agrees and even lowers her eyes in embarrassment. It's difficult to understand how such a moment will end. It is impossible to take your eyes off such a wonderful king, but she is glad that he is no different from his brother and sister. Usually the kids have to work hard to get a treat. The blonde nods. Surely His Majesty was very sweet, even from childhood. He and the princess are somewhat similar to each other. They both love sweet caramel. The man has already eaten 3 candies. Apparently, the magic of the moment has captivated him. Recent events make the guy worry. The choice of a wife and various tasks in the state put pressure on him from above. Only next to Lady Popo does he manage to feel at least a little bit better. The blonde thanks her for the time spent. The girl smiles and then hurries after His Majesty. He remains silent for now. Their conversation has stopped. It seemed that the young man quickened his pace so as not to give away the remaining caramels. He pretended not to understand what was being discussed. The teachers, however, are not in the best physical condition. Popo is out of breath and her hair is disheveled. It needs to be fixed. Raphael came running. It became known that tomorrow the entire empire would read a sensational article that could not be stopped. The press mixed truth and speculation. Someone unknown could have appeared recently to clarify the relationship between the governess and His Majesty. The girl can't think of any events that could be linked to this. She raises her eyebrow in surprise. According to an anonymous source, the king is meeting with someone, and apparently it is Lady Sarara. In this world, gossip about high society people also spreads quickly. It can't be stopped. The blonde asks the teacher to go home. Later, the man will report the published article. He asks for forgiveness for detaining the beauty and getting her involved in an unpleasant matter. The brunette tries to calm the guy down. Everything written is not true. The article is probably someone's invention. The next lesson is, in a few days, if there are journalists hanging around, Jean will go to accompany them. In the morning, the blonde decided to play with his brother and sister. They really asked to be given some time. Initially, the boys tried to hide the drawing homework that Popo had assigned a week ago. Rose didn't really want to draw, so she asked for not to do anything. Sarara sometimes forgets to check the assignments. The blonde shuts her brother's mouth. He's just making it up. In reality, everything is different. After a few minutes, the princess finally admitted she didn't want to do her homework. That's the whole reason. The young man takes the paper to look at the drawings. He is silent. The boys must have really impressed him. Surely the man will say something about how the brother and sister draw well, but on the contrary, he suggests trying again. Another half hour has passed. The king feels truly exhausted. He just wants to leave. I can't believe Popo does this on a regular basis. My sister asks me to help her paint it. Her hand is too tired to continue. At their age, Helios could draw a decent portrait of his parents, but the teacher told him not to use him as an example. Raphael burst into the room. Finally, the very article they had been discussing before had arrived. Fur snatches the paper to see what is written there about the mistress. The kids do not understand who she is. In order to avoid explaining the truth, the young man asks to quickly wash his hands and go to bed. It is already quite late. Moving away, the young man clarifies all the details. It turns out that the article claims that the king is having an affair. His mistress enters the palace and spends nights nearby. Not much is said about the lady. She is presented as a stranger. Neither her identity nor her occupation are revealed. It's only a matter of time before they dig up everything about her, and Sarara could be in trouble. The girl looks out the window only to hide back because she sees a whole crowd of people. She grabs the letter that came from the palace. At first, the lady did not think that His Majesty would write to her personally. There was certainly something important in the article. It was expected that there would be complete chaos, that a simple soul got the position of governess of the younger Adelios. It was simpler that way. The next morning, the girl put on a mask, and a carriage was sent to take her to class. Jean drags the brunette inside. It's better for her not to stand outside. People will notice the stranger. Bronte asks if anything happened during his absence. Except for a small crowd, everything is fine. With these words, the heroine asks to tell the king not to worry. As it turns out, he is not the only one who is worried. There is one detail left. Only the content of the article is missing to understand, since it was not mentioned in the letter. The gossip columnist wrote that Helios has a mistress, and they spend almost every night together. The couple didn't even have dates, just walks. Usually such groundless rumors disappear on their own. For the same reason, the king will appear less often at the twins' palace. But there is no point in worrying. The Virgin knew there was no spark between them, but she still felt downcast. The facts had been taken completely wrong. Jean can't help but notice that Sarara has an interesting image. Only her eyes are open, but that's the most important thing. Tearing off her mask, the woman smiles nervously. She was simply afraid that someone would recognize her. Half a day passed, and while the children went to wash up, the girl sat down to rest. She needed to check some assignments. My head is still filled with thoughts about that ill-fated article that caused so much alarm in everyone. A girl entered the room and immediately started asking if Sarara had been mentioned in the news. She thought it was about the governess. The brunette nods, but the man walked her home at night and nothing else happened between them. The lessons end rather late sometimes, the night does this, but then His Majesty also had time. Newspapers love to exaggerate the truth, the girl agreed, but there were too many details. She was no longer sure. One of the pages had something to do with hugs, which must have happened that evening. The incident with the caramels led to something terrible. Before leaving, the brunette heard a question about the magazine. It was still with her, so the governess would like to read it. Sarara calmly reads the first page, which already talks about how the two spent their nights together. Luckily, no specific information about Popo has been found, but overall everything else is complete nonsense. Young Clocks, the main candidate, is considered to be the one with the greatest influence, but for some reason they didn't write about her. The girl looks at the submitted work. It doesn't look like it was done by a 7-year-old child. The king looked after his brother and sister. In the absence of the governess, he helped with homework and testing. The picture turned out great. It has Sarah drawn in it, and it was drawn by the emperor himself. It will be necessary to train children better in drawing, of course. Thanks to help, not everything is so bad, but still. The students the woman taught in her past life loved it when she left short comments in their diary. They were distracted by asking what a secret bore was. It was a strange expression, they must have heard it somewhere. It turned out that they meant a secret romance. But the heroes themselves did not understand what this meant. Such a complex word was written on the piece of paper that Helios's advisor brought. Rosalina realized that if Raphael was so worried, then there was something written there about a woman. This was quite logical. It's obvious that the brother has a girlfriend that he hasn't talked about, and from Sarah's reaction it's clear that it's not her. At the end of the lesson, the beauty asked what the teacher thought about Helios. This was unexpected. The blonde is literally interrogating him. Obviously, the girl likes His Highness. Today the princess is not herself. She is asked to sit back down. It is better to concentrate on her studies. The lesson clearly didn't go well. The girl remained incredibly angry until the end, showing her character. Raphael pesters the king again. He has planned for Clock to be his dance partner at the next ball. Some aristocrats have already put two and two together. The course of events needs to be changed. Everything is quite serious. It is clear that it is a simple solution: to take Sylvia and put her next to him to ensure Sarara's peace of mind. Until now, the emperor had not appeared at the ball with any girl. If Clocks was nearby, everyone would decide that she was the future empress. The worst thing is that even Popo will think this way. It could hurt her feelings.